Morning, another Pacers victory morning, a Tuesday, as they they made it interesting last night against the Sacramento Kings. Didn't look so great for a while, but they got it done just in the nick of time, almost like a superhero in a movie, Kevin, with just time ticking down on the clock. You didn't think they were ever going to hit another three-point shot again for a while there in the fourth quarter. Then, boom, back-to-back from Halliburton and Siakam, and the rest was just free throws.
Yeah, about 7 chances to escape death, and seemingly every time the Kings caught him. But then, yes, finally Tyrese Halliburton hit a $200 million shot. So a very fitting way, I think, to end one of the wilder months of the year. And as always on Tuesdays, Rick Carlisle going to join us coming up at 8 o'clock.
Looking forward to hearing your conversation with him. In the meantime, Frank Reich is back in business, baby. How about that with Andrew Luck? Did you think those two would team up again on a national stage?
Yeah, not very often that, I guess, in life, all of a sudden you have one guy who's theoretically the boss to the other, and then it flips a handful of years later. But I guess that's what's happening out at Stanford. You know, it's funny. Obviously, this conversation would have, never come up. But if for some reason you and I would have talked about this yesterday, Jeff, of name the college equivalent to Frank Reich. If you all of a sudden threw out a bunch of colleges, I would have been like, wow. He's a Stanford man, He's a man of integrity. He's a good football man. That's kind of how I view the Stanford football program. Now, granted, they haven't had recent success, really, ever since David Shaw's departure. But, yeah, that one makes a lot of sense by all accounts. It sounds like this is just going to be a 7-8 month thing. And I know Andrew Luck certainly holds Frank Reich in high regard. Obviously, the retirement was jarring and was sudden. But, he said many times that 2018 season was the most fun he's ever had playing, and Frank Reich was his head coach for that season. So texted Frank last night, said, again, you kind of fit Stanford. And, again, it doesn't sound like it's anything long-term, but I think to evaluate where your program is at, Frank Reich kind of managing the operation makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and it felt like Stanford, when you go deeper into it and look at a lot of the context, it felt like they just wanted a complete reset of the football team based on the previous administration. The way that maybe that administration had dealt with people was a little heavy-handed, and maybe even worse with dealing with some of the female employees around there. Frank Reich is as good a person as you're going to find. He obviously knows football, so he's going to go in there. And it also says a little bit right now that maybe Stanford and Andrew Luck weren't exactly thrilled with the list of available candidates to try and get this thing for a long-term permanent coach right now. So you bring in a guy who you know is of great character, that knows football, that has had successes in life, and you bring him in and you just kind of reset the program for a while, right?
Yeah, Frank's got no ego. I mean, he's going to do exactly what you want him to do. He's a man of integrity, and I mean, let's be honest, it's an awkward time to hire a coach. Now, I would highly advise anyone hiring a coach today. Do you know why?
Why?
I'd highly advise against anything social media related today. Today's the worst day of the year. There's no worse day than April Fool's Day.
Don't do anything today. Don't hire anybody today. Don't have your press conferences today.
I don't want portal announcements. I don't want any of that. Like you imagine a Purdue fan seeing Braden Smith into the portal. IU fan, Kurt Signetti's taking the Cowboys job. This is an awful day. Today is just survive till April 2nd.
Spoken like a true reporter right there, KB.
Probably spoken like a man addicted to Twitter, honestly, more than anything.
You know that's not good for your mental health, right?
I want to say a few years ago we had like a Tiger Woods announcement that he was playing in the Masters on April Fool. I'm like, what are we doing here? Come on now. You have to stay away from any sort of breaking news on April 1st.
Isn't Twitter kind of April Fool's Day every day?
Yeah, I'm a bigger fan of Twitter than most. You just, you probably should stick to the right tabs on Twitter.
Oh, a lot of muting going on, especially these days. So anyway, Kevin Bowen, Jeff Rickard, James Boyd continues his assignment at the NFL owners meeting in West Palm Beach, Florida. Chris Ballard spoke after we got off the air. Well, I guess towards the end of when we were on the air yesterday, so we didn't have a chance to talk about that. When you go back and look at his comments and the things that he said and the context in which he was presenting things for the Colts, what was your big takeaway from his moment in front of the microphones yesterday?
Yeah, there are a couple things I think positionally I want to go over, not quarterback related. It sounds like they view another position on their offense as a little bit more of a competition than I thought. When you hear Chris Ballard explain, hey, we feel like from a skill set standpoint, there are a lot of similarities to Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones that kind of benefits us offensively. That's a little different tune than he had at the Combine. The Combine was, we don't care stylistically. what our other quarterback looks like. Was that a change of heart? That might be a follow-up question that I would have to have for Chris Ballard there. Again, we can get a little bit more into the actual, reps and splitting of these reps and what the competition could unfold here coming up here when they reconvene. What is it, less than 3 weeks? I think it's April 21st for the start of the offseason program. And then lastly, obviously you certainly hope for Jim Irsay's health and all of that. But I do think it's a bummer we've yet to hear from him now, 3 months into the offseason. I thought he sounded very good in the postgame locker room after that season finale against Jacksonville. We obviously saw him on the field, the Ring of Honor ceremony with Dallas Clark back in the fall. But, at this point, the next time we might hear from him, I guess, would be the draft. Well, I mean, you know how the draft works, Jeff.
Yeah.
The draft is the greatest hype show for all
Everything.
32 teams.
For everything.
People are on top of a mountain after their
Everybody's
draft.
0-0. We're going to go win the Super Bowl with this crop of players. The draft fell exactly the way we wanted it to. Every guy we selected is exactly the guy we wanted here.
So I just think the further away you get from the end of the season and the longest playoff drought you've been in 30 years, now I just feel like talking to your fans takes on a different tune in Jim Irsay's eyes. And so I do think it was a bummer. Obviously, you hope his health is good, and it sounds like physically is probably more the issue with him. Again, I thought he sounded great in that post-game locker room. So, whether it's Zoom, whether it's something virtual, I wish by April 1st we would have heard from him in a grander scale than just penning a letter to the fans.
I always hope that Jim Irsay is doing well and is living his best life and as healthy as he can be. I think I've told you this before, KB, maybe I haven't, but after my heart attack and all the complications that went with that and, being revived 3 different times in 27 minutes and getting life flighted to IU Methodist and all that kind of thing, kind of came around a couple of days later, and one of the first things I saw, somebody delivered flowers, and KB, it was from Jim Irsay. And so that sticks with you for a while. That sticks with you.
I hope that you never hear anything else out of my mouth other than the philanthropic side of Jim Irsay is everything that is talked about times 10.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of these things quietly. I mean, that's the first time you've really, I think, shared that, in a major public sense. So, yes, I mean, again, no one is questioning the heart of Jim Irsay. What he's done for our city is unbelievable. But if I can speak in football terms here in 2025, again, you obviously hope his health is in a great spot, but I do think it's a disservice to your fan base that you haven't spoken to them in over 2.5 months.
Do you think that maybe there was a collective decision that in the wake of everything that had transpired for him personally, physically, otherwise, that he just wanted to stay quiet and stay in the background as much as possible moving forward?
Yeah, but he's the owner. I mean, he can decide
I
this.
get it.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering
there's no collective that's necessary.
If they just decided to do that, or he decided,
because ultimately he's the one that decided to run it back with these guys. It's not Chris Ballard deciding I want to run it back with myself.
Yeah. All right. So we'll talk about all those things coming up a little bit later on. For those of you who've been so supportive and keeping up with it and sending me messages, and I'm just overwhelmed at the number of people that do, whether it's through text, email, even a few DMs. Got mom home last night.
Love it.
After 5 days in the hospital, kind of an up and down, but she's doing well. Got her all set up with the stuff that she's going to need at her assisted living place, and finally got all that installed at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully, moving forward after today, I'll start getting some sleep again, KB.
Yeah,
but the news is she's doing well. She's doing okay.
That's the most important part of it. So glad that you were able to take care of all of that, and glad to hear Mark Dykton is on another vacation.
Yeah,
Corbin Lingenfelter, thank you.
Corbin, how about you? How many days in a row are you going to work before you decide to take a little time off? Corbin is like a nose to the grindstone, let's get it done kind of guy every day, all
producing
day.
the IndyCar races here in 2025.
Yes.
So yes, they'll be back on the schedule here coming up, and all of a sudden, Corbin, your weekends when the calendar turns to May, they will evaporate very quickly for you.
How is that working out for you? How are the first 2 races gone for you, working now full time on those broadcasts?
They've been good.
Yeah.
Couple rookie mistakes here and there, but nothing that can't be corrected.
Don't you wish you had that voice for radio?
Gold.
Absolute gold. Come on, man.
Yes, God is speaking to us on April Fool's Day. Exactly. It sounds like my worst nightmare.
All right, coming up in a minute, we'll tell you about everything else that happened last night. We've got a Final Four for the women to talk about, and the Pacers come up with a come-from-behind win at home just in the nick of time. They got hot right when they needed to, and we'll tell you all about that and give you the details as you get ready for your day here in Indianapolis, right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. KB, a great day to be an Indiana Pacers fan. They had 5 opportunities with 3-point field goals midway to late in the fourth quarter last night against the Kings to take a lead after being behind for almost all of the entire second half.
Felt like 30.
And then finally, boom, boom. Tyrese Halliburton comes up with a big shot, followed by Pascal Siakam. And then it was just the free throw game to hang on to beat the Sacramento Kings last night. And so they were able to do that and get a 111-109 victory. And the only reason it was as close as 2 points for Sacramento is they hit a buzzer-beating 3 that didn't really matter at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me at the start of yesterday, no Matherin, no Turner, Halliburton has his season high in turnovers, Siakam has his worst shooting night of the year, I would have said, oh boy, we're getting cranky Rick Carlisle coming up here at 8 o'clock. So to be able to kind of survive all of that and get a win is certainly better than the alternative. Shout out to Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker. I thought they were critical in getting you back into that game, really just giving you some life. I thought it was kind of a lull and a little bit of a listless atmosphere, and I think the team had a lot to do with it. So the Pacers went small. Thomas Bryant pretty much got benched there in the second half. And again, I thought Toppin and Walker were huge before Halliburton finally hit that shot. So on the verge of clinching a playoff spot here. And when I say playoff spot, I mean a top 6 seed. So magic number just 1. They could have that done with a Hawks loss or a Pacers win coming up tomorrow night against the Hornets.
They also have a 2-game advantage over the Detroit Pistons for that 4th spot in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee falls after the Pacers win last night to 3.5 games off the pace of the Pacers. And the Pacers will play again at home on Wednesday night against the Charlotte Hornets. You'll be able to listen to it right here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. All right, college basketball last night. The Butler Bulldogs took the court. They took the court in that brand new tournament that everybody's raving about, the College Basketball Crown in Las Vegas. KB, they rolled the dice. They came up winners against Utah, 86-84. Here's the thing. Even if Butler wins out, and I'm glad that they're playing, glad that they earned this, even if they win out, I don't think they can have a 500 record before it's all said and done.
Imagine telling a Butler fan at the start of the year, you're going to be the last team from Indiana playing. You're going to play a game in April.
In Vegas.
They would have signed up for that, right?
And they did, and they are. But what a great opportunity to get more practice reps and more things done with your program moving forward, right?
Or just try to make some money and be in Vegas.
What?
I
don't know what
probably
you're
the better
talking
way
about.
to put it.
No, but
Boise State coming up tomorrow night for Butler. Still outside of the money. They got to win one more game to get into the money. I think Boise State was actually a team that was certainly much closer to the bubble than Butler was. But yes, Pierre Brooks, a little layup with 3 seconds to go. Butler keeps their season alive.
All right. Also college basketball on the women's side last night. UConn gets it done again. They got a big win over USC, who is playing without Juju Watkins, out with the injury right now. But they are in their 16th Final Four in the last 17 years, KB. It's not really April and Final Four time for the women's game without either South Carolina or UConn being there, is it?
How about our only non-1 seed, men or women, being the plucky Cinderella that is UConn women? That's it. And they're the 2 seed, and hell, I mean, the Juju Watkins injury is probably the only reason why they're in the Final Four. But no, Paige Beckers obviously is a star-studded player. So yes, UConn, Texas, UCLA, South Carolina.
When I was
Final Four.
Getting ready for the 4A championship game over at Cambridge the other night, I was watching the UConn-Oklahoma Elite 8 game, and it was a fairly close game until the final minute or two of the first half. And then in the second half, Paige Beckers took over. And it was just all she wrote at that point in time. She's one of the few folks in the women's game right now that can completely just take over a game by herself. Juju Watkins would have been that, yeah.
She can hoop, certainly.
No question about that. Major League Baseball yesterday. Cincinnati Reds got a 14-3 win over the Texas Rangers.
How about Ellie
De La Cruz.
Where are you, Mark Dykton?
Single, double, 2 home runs, and he was using that bat.
Runs
KB.
out of town like he just robbed something here. Ellie De La Cruz, 7 ribbies, 2 homers, the 436-foot shot. Of course, Mark Dykton would counter with, did you see Carson Kelly in the cycle late last night? The Cubs beat the AAA team out of, Sacramento, I believe?
I don't know. Is it Sacramento? Is it Vegas? Is it Oakland? Who knows?
21 hits for the Cubbies last night. They roll 18-3. How about the Dodgers start to the year? Are they going to go 162-0?
They might. Should be the Dodgers and Yankees, right? Everybody else is just kind of playing for prizes.
Looks like decent. It will be chilly, and I think you will qualify under 60 degrees. But opening night over at Victory Field, again, looks like Mother Nature will cooperate from a precipitation standpoint. 635 with the Iowa Cubs there, and again, they have the deal of temperatures lower than 60 at first pitch. All fans in attendance going to get another ticket to an April home game. I think we'll check that. So, if you can bundle up a little bit and get ready for the 55-degree first pitch or whatever end up being, you'll get another ticket here in April as the Indians get underway over at Victory Field.
Go back, you talk about that cycle for Carson Kelly. That's you didn't have to wait very long this season to get what they say is the rarest statistical feat in all of Major League Baseball.
I think triple was the last one he got late last night there. So, yeah, I don't want to talk about the Cubs any more than we have to, but congrats.
Hey, having nothing to do with anything other than it's just strange, why do baseball players have the strangest injury occurrences of any sport that's out there? It's always this. Freddie Freeman aggravates his surgically repaired ankle in the shower. He called it a shower mishap. Guys sleeping wrong. Guys,
I'm not going to judge anybody
things
on what they do in the shower. By all means, have at it. Freddie Freeman there. So, yeah, is this a little bit of a Dustin Johnson, fell down the steps at the Masters? Is that what we're going with here?
There's a lot of weird things that happen to athletes. It seems like baseball has most of them. I don't know why that is.
Oscar Clough, what do you know about the Australian big dude heading to Purdue?
Not very much other than the paragraph that I read yesterday. What do you know and can share with us?
Big dude, 6'11", 260. Again, the thought was physicality would be added. A big man would be added. I mean, let's be frank. When Will Berg and Caleb first got on the floor in the tournament, I think opponents guarded you closer than they guarded either of those two. So I think it was second in the nation in rebounding last year. You watch him at South Dakota State. It is a very traditional big man. Very effective scorer. Certainly how it translates to the Big Ten. You're kind of always curious when guys move up a level. He did have a great game against Alabama last year, for what it's worth. Anytime you see the mid-major guys in the portal, I try to see, okay, did you play any high-major teams, and how did you play in those games? He had 21 and 15 against Bama this past season. So they should have certainly much more front court depth and just competent front court depth, frankly, if and when they need to turn to that. Trey Kaufman-Renn, of course, still on the team. They'll get Daniel Jacobson back. So don't think rim protector, but think traditional big with a big old body. And that is what Oscar Clough did last year at South Dakota State, at Washington State prior to that. So nothing says welcome to West Lafayette like coming from the Sunshine Coast of Australia.
All right. Also, speaking of sunshine, West Palm Beach, the NFL owners' meetings continue today.
Should mention Miles Colvin, by the way, in the transfer portal as well for Purdue.
Thank you.
He obviously was a rotational player for them. I don't think the most shocking news, but I'll be curious to see if Purdue dabbles in a little bit of a wing guard now to kind of round out their portal haul.
All right. Now, I had a question for you about the NFL owners' meetings. Apparently today they start working on some rules changes, but do we expect anything more specifically with the Colts coming out today?
I believe their brass talked yesterday, and I would assume that's it. Again, doesn't sound like Jim Irsay is there or talking. I don't know if anybody else from the Irsay family will be speaking, but yeah, Chris Powell yesterday. Shane Steichen, of course, yesterday, and so I think that is all, but I don't know. Maybe we'll check in. Should we check in with James Boyd later?
I hope we check in with James Boyd. That's the plan. I mean,
what's he doing down there?
Eating
he
more
moved on to the
Fruit Loops
water
this morning.
park at the Breakers?
What did he say he had for breakfast yesterday? He was just
went croissant, if I'm not mistaken. I was
he's going fancy.
Boy, that's super nice there.
He's going fancy. I wonder if he's doing a cappuccino with his pinky out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if that doesn't strike me as James Boyd. I don't think is he a coffee guy?
I don't know, but you spend a little time at the Breakers and all of a sudden you kind of blend in, right?
I don't think he is. I don't know. I stuck out like a sore thumb whenever I show up at these NFL owners meetings.
Wearing like your Tennessee Volunteer checkerboard socks.
Yeah, wearing my Hoka shoes that I'm rocking here.
Hey, do not no slander on the Hokas, man. They have saved my feet.
I told you, I got no no cartilage in my right big toe, so I've had to turn to Hoka and it saved me.
Yeah, not bad stuff. All right, Corbin is in today from Mark Dykton, who is off on his 48th vacation already in the 2025 year, and we'll get more updates on that as we go along as well. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. We got a lot to do today. Rick Carlisle and KB coming your way at the top of the hour. We've got some Pacers basketball to talk about, more Colts information. Stay here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. You sparking a little dance move there when you hear David Bowie? You good?
Boy, sparking a dance move would be the biggest disservice to dancing in the history of the world, frankly. But I don't know. The hips were moving a little bit there, and all of a sudden I felt a little creak in them.
Was your wedding the last time you danced, or has there been gleeful movement from you since then?
Yeah, I think Rosie wanted the other side from The Greatest Showman last night after dinner. I promised her if she ate all of her dinner, we could play it, and
good.
We had a dance move or two.
See, that's good. That's fantastic right there. They are dancing over there at Gainbridge Fieldhouse today as the Pacers are putting themselves in pretty nice position for a nice little run here in the postseason, much like last year. They're playing some of their best basketball right now, and even when they're having precarious games like last night, they're finding ways to win.
You know, one thing I want to ask Rick when he joins us, and I don't know how much he'll share, but, I mean, Jeff, we're, 2.5 weeks away from the playoffs, and last night, I would say their best lineup was small ball. And it wasn't necessarily like small ball of like hammer Siakam in the post. I mean, again, I know we talked about it yesterday. Siakam has really been inefficient here over the past couple of weeks. It's so uncharacteristic for him. Now, certainly, he had a big-time defensive possession there late and then hit the three to really ice it. But Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker, they got in the game there together third quarter. Again, Miles Turner did not play due to illness. And that was a curveball that even against Sabonis, the Kings really couldn't figure out. Frankly, I thought the Kings just ignored Sabonis way too much there. But when you play teams in the playoffs that don't have a traditional center or don't have a center that really fear you, is that a little bit of a, back pocket option you can turn to there? It was critical last night. Again, Toppin and Walker were huge for you. Obviously, Halliburton finally hit the shot. Seemingly, the Pacers missed a million of them to tie or take the lead throughout the fourth quarter. But, again, shout out to Obi and Jarris because in a little bit of an unconventional way, I thought they were really important to kind of keeping you within striking distance. And then, obviously, you finally were able to give it to your star, and he hit the shot.
I love me some Obi Toppin. You know that. He might be my favorite player on the Pacers. In fact, I'm going to declare today, Obi Toppin and T.J. McConnell, my two favorite players on the Indiana
Pacers.
Pacers.
Look at that. No, that's not an April Fool's joke?
No, and okay. I love Tyrese. Good. I love the other guys. I love Tyrese Halliburton. There's no shade on those guys. I like it. They bring energy off the bench. I like guys who bring energy off the bench, Kevin, because it makes a big difference. And last night, the three guys that really brought it off the bench, Toppin, you mentioned Jarris Walker, T.J. McConnell, those guys responsible for 63 of the 111 points that the Pacers scored last night. How about that?
And you needed it, without obviously Mathurin, who has been such a scorer. And again, Siakam was 4 of 15.
Oh, I take that back. I was looking
16.
at fantasy points. The points I'll revise that and make it 42. But yeah.
And Halliburton, I mean, you want to talk about uncharacteristic. He's got 3 turnovers in the first 5 minutes of the game. It's like you wanted to be like, wait, am I seeing something here? I think he had 5 total, which is a season high. So I'll echo what I said a few minutes ago, Jeff. On a night where there's no Mathurin, no Turner, Halliburton has a season high in turnovers, Siakam has arguably his worst shooting night of the year, you still won the football game. Or excuse me, you still won the basketball game. I don't know why football's on my mind. Maybe I'm thinking of owners' meetings. You still won. So that's certainly better than the alternative, and we'll chat about it with Rick Carlisle coming up here at the top of the hour.
Yeah, but you got to love that bench. I talked about the 42 points from those three, and Bradley also had some nice minutes as well as the bench was getting it done. And now they come down the stretch here, and they've got 2 more home games on this homestand. Charlotte on Wednesday, Utah on Friday. The Jazz beat the Hornets last night. Did you see that? Talk about 2 titans of the NBA going up against one another, KB.
That's one way to put it. Yeah, 1 game. That is the magic number for the Pacers away from clinching. Speaking of basketball, Fran Fraschilla going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock. He's in town to call the NIT over at Hinkle, but other topics I would definitely want to chat with him about. He calls a ton of Big 12 games, so I know he's got some thoughts on Darren DeVries down there at Indiana, so we'll chat with Fran about that. And he had kind of an indirect Purdue-related tweet recently, so I do want to ask Fran about that when he joins us. We had him on last April in regards to the NIT as well. Always enjoy our conversations with him.
Yeah, Fran Fraschilla he's also just a good dude.
Good dude,
got to know
dude.
him a little bit at ESPN when I was working there. But you talk about grinders, KB? That guy is working all the time. He's doing somebody's radio show or he's appearing on a TV broadcast. Like, he is one of those that just loves talking about basketball.
And just a genuine guy. I was fortunate to do an event last year with him. Gene Steratore were among some of the people here in Indy. And, just chatted in the green room with him before going on stage, and just a great guy. I mean, exactly. And Territory, I think, is the same way. Obviously, we hear Gene a whole lot during the tournament when they go to the old officiating expert, and both of them were just super down to earth, seemingly cared about me as much as I cared about them, and that's something I don't know if you usually see. So, yeah, Gene and Fran, two really good guys.
All right. We'll talk about that again, 9 o'clock. He's coming your way. Want to go back to Palm Beach, Florida again, West Palm Beach to be specific. This is kind of interesting. Another example, more evidence that the owners in the National Football League truly view their product as little more than a television show, KB, because that's where the money comes from, right? We've seen that. They have approved what they're calling a tweak to league rules for flexing Thursday night games on Amazon Prime. They'll reduce the window for notifying teams of a change to just 21 days, so that they say the potential flex decisions, it will give them a better opportunity to make timely decisions on the kind of games that they want to get there. But again, now not only will teams continue to play on 3 days rest, essentially, but they won't even know they're going to be playing on 3 days rest until just 3 weeks before that.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out they've only done this once in 2 years, so we haven't seen a whole lot of it. But if and when they do it and have, I guess, the ability to do it, sure, you obviously think about the teams and the players. I also think it sucks for the fans. A lot of people plan a significant amount of their fall schedule around Sunday at 1 o'clock or the primetime games. The Colts haven't had a whole lot of home primetime games.
You're talking about Sunday, Monday specifically, right?
Well, but if you're playing on Thursday, a lot of people say, hey, let's take Friday off, or let's make that a little bit more.
I want to work at that place.
Of a weekend there. And, so that obviously you throw a little bit of a wrench in those plans. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't love it, but it's probably worth pointing out context-wise. We've only seen it once in 2 years so far.
Well, they want to do it a little bit more often, and Amazon Prime is the group pushing this, and the owners are like, hey, we'll take your money, and yeah, we'll do that. And again, I'm not a huge fan of Thursday night football. I think the football is less than what you see on Sunday and Monday nights. I think it just creates more potential for injuries for guys who haven't completely recovered and healed from the brutal grind that is an NFL game on Sunday. I've just never been a big fan of it.
Sam Ellinger going to your Broncos?
Yeah, there's your backup right there, to Bo Nix.
I'm trying to think. Who was it? Stidham? Was
that
the backup?
It was Stidham, and Stidham may still come back. I don't know, but they have added Sam Ellinger. So maybe there is something to drafting a quarterback on the third day.
Jason Bean is still on the roster, undrafted free agent from Kansas, who I know had a flash or two last year in the preseason. So those are the three quarterbacks: Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, Jason Bean. As I've said now for the last week or so, again, Sam Ellinger was needed to be your backup for more than a dozen games the last 2 years. So while I don't think it's like this immense loss, and he was this unbelievably important, a budding star in your quarterback room, I do think that he did have a job that was one play away very often. And so now, how do you go about that? Corbin, let's play a little Shane Steichen from the Breakers down there. Thank you, James Boyd, for sending us some audio from down there. Again, Shane Steichen, the AFC coaches had their breakfast yesterday. I think NFC coaches are today. With Shane, you never get too elaborate on it, but it was probably short and sweet, his explanation of what this quarterback situation is going to look like this offseason.
I think that's part of the process right now that we're going through is the competition. So, he's going to have to take advantage of the reps that he gets, him and Daniel. It's a competition, and competition makes everyone better.
So they'll split, Jeff, and it's a different tune of reps for Anthony Richardson. Now it's no competition, and it sounds like they will be splitting reps. And Shane got a little bit more specific of don't think this is, hey, this is the Daniel Jones day, and then there's the Anthony Richardson day. If you're doing third down or red zone on a specific day, it could be like every other series. That sort of angle to it. So again, OTAs, the Colts had 3 weeks of them last year, typically late May into early June. And then the dozen or so training camp practices plus the preseason games. It sounds like they will be splitting reps. We'll see for how long, of course, before they name a starter.
I want to get your thoughts on this, too. I was reading JB's article this morning in The Athletic, and he quoted Chris Ballard and a lot of things that Ballard had to say. Ballard went down the road of, look at all the careers that have been revived with second chances over the last couple of years. And he talked about the Baker Mayfields, and he talked about the Sam Darnolds. And it sounds like he's hoping to get something from either one of his quarterbacks, whether it's the continuing development of Anthony Richardson. And he also talked about, maybe his timeline is just different than a lot of other guys, and they're learning to maybe accept different timelines for certain quarterbacks at this point in time. Do you put any stock into that stuff? Is he just kind of repeating a national narrative, or do you think they really believe that one of these two guys is going to make that next step forward?
Well, I think it's pretty unprecedented for either of them to do that. Again, Daniel Jones had far more starts with the Giants than Baker Mayfield had, or Geno Smith had, or Sam Darnold had. And also, those guys went to the conference where you can do that. You can't do that in the AFC. The NFC is a joke when it comes to quarterbacks compared to the AFC.
Well, you've gone down that list many times, but I mean, you throw in the young guys that have already showed promise as rookies and second-year quarterbacks, it's probably 7 deep, 8 deep of legit franchise quarterbacks in the AFC,
Yeah,
right?
but Joe Burrow would be the best quarterback in the NFC, right?
Top of my head, probably. I mean, I do think that Hurts is really developed, but yeah, he's probably.
Burrow didn't even make the playoffs in the AFC.
Stafford a little bit older now, but he was really good for a couple of years there. But yeah.
So I think you can Band-Aid it a little bit more and kind of skate by. And as much as we talk about Baker and Darnold and Geno, it's like, well, I mean, what? They've combined to win one playoff game. Like, I mean, there still is a very defined ceiling here.
Same with Kirk Cousins, too.
And so, that's how I view it. I am interested in this, and maybe James will join us a little bit later. What does it need to look like this offseason, I guess, for Richardson? Because for those people that have been out to training camp, and look, I mean, we've got fans out there that have been to every single, training camp practice. You can watch, I mean, hell, you can watch the vast majority of this competition play out in front of your eyes if you'd like. I mean, there's been moments where you've gone out to the practice fields at Grand Park, and like, Gardner Minshew looks efficient. Matt Ryan looks efficient. I mean, days of 10 of 12, and, yes, it's primarily dink and dunk, but like, what exactly does it need to look like for Richardson and or Daniel Jones for you to commit to one or the other? Because I think at times you've had Colts quarterbacks who have gone on to have very mediocre seasons look just fine in a training camp session or a practice session. So that's probably a little bit harder to define. Shane used the words, hey, you need to see consistency and you need to see production. Okay, exactly what does that look like in OTAs and or training camp?
He spent some time talking about Anthony Richardson and these much publicized private workouts that he's been going through in a healthy offseason. Here's what Shane Steichen had to say about those workouts.
That's a big part of it. A lot of these guys go to these quarterback coaches in the offseason, whether it's in California or Florida, to work on the biomechanics. And, I think it all does start with the ground up. You know what I mean? It's all the ground up and weight transfer and all that stuff and target line. And I think those guys in Florida that he works with do a hell of a job with that stuff. So I think as you continue to work on that, you can see even some of the guys, the veteran guys, like late in their career, some of the guys that are going to the Hall of Fame started going to these guys, in their career as this thing started to take off, the biomechanics part of it. So I think that's a great off-season deal for these guys to get that, that stuff done. And then obviously when you get into the season, I mean, you're going,
Right. So the other thing that Ballard said yesterday in some of his comments is he harkened back to when Andrew Luck went and spent time with Tom House because he was trying to fix some mechanics that his shoulder issues were causing. And Ballard seemed to think that Andrew was very successful in working with Tom House and kind of working those things out. So the Colts believe that some of these private quarterback coaches can help guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say Anthony Richardson can find improvement. We also probably shouldn't be making any comparisons of Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones to Andrew Luck.
No, but I think the point was just that he was making the point that they have seen where those guys have helped.
Right, you can make some strides. One thing I do want to talk to James about, and I kind of nodded my head hearing Shane Steichen say this was, and I'm summarizing a little bit here, but I've often said about the Colts passing game last season, specifically with Richardson, they struggled to find easy. We can find an Anthony Richardson highlight reel pretty easily, and it'll wow you. If I throw up a 2-minute long Anthony Richardson highlight reel, it's going to wow you. We need to have a boring Richardson highlight reel. We don't have that. Like
completing the 8-yard passes.
Boom. Here is your tight end over the middle, and 2nd and 8 becomes 2nd and 2.
Or you get that first down on 3rd and 6, right? That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, well, I mean, hell, 3rd and 6 would be a highlight, honestly. I mean, I'm just talking methodical, boring, Jack Doyle in a cloud of dust. I mean, that sort of just, all right, you are being just ahead of the chains is the phrase that you often hear. Shane went there a little bit more yesterday than I remember him doing. He spoke specifically to completion percentage a lot more than I also remember him doing. So when I hear find easy better, it's another way of saying go out and find a tight end early in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I still, I still believe the first
Can
or
be
the
a
second
quarterback's
round.
best friend.
That has to be there. So I just want to see I don't know if a low light reel is the right way to call it. I need to see a boring, methodical Colts passing game with Anthony Richardson more than anything. I know he can throw the deep ball to Alec Pierce. I know he can Houdini-like throw the dude off him and all of a sudden extend and create. Like, that is in there, and that's what makes him unique. But in order to consistently be the guy for 17 weeks, obviously availability comes into play, but he's just simply got to find a few more of the second quarter, 10 minutes to go in the game. Again, 2nd and 8 becomes 2nd and 2, and next thing you know, Rigoberto Sanchez isn't needed to come onto the field.
Yeah, no, a couple of things that spark some thoughts of mine when you speak there. Do you think that AR sometimes, because he's capable of those wow plays, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times a game sometimes, right? Do you think that he's trying to do that sometimes on every play and maybe playing outside of himself sometimes?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement to make. And I also think personnel-wise, it's an area where I don't largely think the Colts have failed Anthony Richardson personnel-wise, let me be clear. But I do think they have failed him at the tight end position and at the running back position with just a consistent pass catcher.
Mm-hmm.
So I think both of those areas they need to get better in just helping out your quarterback. So I'll be curious how that continues to unfold.
And maybe they need to find that big-time receiver, whether it's a tight end or wide receiver, and they've certainly got consistent production from wide receivers. I don't know if they've got the huge, just explosive, consistent play out of wide receivers. And the reason I bring that up is when you look at the great quarterbacks, they all seem to have a near Hall of Fame or a Hall of Fame counterpart. We look at see what's happening at Kansas City right now with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. He's got that emergency ripcord every time it's 3rd and 8. Somehow, some way, it seems like Kelce's finding a way to get open, and Mahomes finds him one way or the other. You go back to the great 49ers teams. Joe Montana had Jerry Rice and vice versa. You look at the Cowboys that won 3 Super Bowls. Troy Aikman had Michael Irvin, right? It just always seems that those great quarterbacks or great receivers also have somebody that goes along with them, correct?
Well, Shane Steichen, I think in his history, you go back to their San Diego days, he's talked about this before. They had Antonio Gates rule, where anytime Gates had a man, it was just man coverage. You just threw the ball to him. Philip Rivers just knew it. You just threw the ball to Gates.
He's going to get open.
And even in Philly with Dallas Goedert, a little bit more in his prime, you still had, pretty high level tight end. So I'm not, to ask for Michael Irvin is probably a bit far-fetched, but just a little bit more competence.
But somebody who is always your go-to guy, right?
At that position, I think, is realistic. Imagine saying to you 4 months ago, we're going to get Frank Reich and Bill Belichick in a game this season.
I like it. You wouldn't say it was outside of the NFL.
And it's not an April Fool's joke. If I said to you on January 1st, we're going to get Frank Reich and Bill Belichick on November 8th, you would have said what?
I would have said
Cowboys
you are
versus
off your
Raiders. I don't even know what the matchup would have been.
You're off your rocker.
Stanford at North Carolina. Coming up on November 8th.
Wow.
Frank Reich and Bill Belichick meeting again.
This is why we love sports. You can't write this stuff, Kevin. You can't make it up. 90 days ago, if I'd have told you that. You can't make it up.
I want to say Frank Reich was a finalist for the Maryland job at some point. I'm thinking college jobs,
right,
of course. And I think they went with Mike Loxley. Frank Reich played at Maryland for those. Curious why that would have been there. But yes, he will be Andrew Luck's interim, as weird as that sounds, for the 2025 season. And by all accounts, given that it's late March, early April, Andrew Luck will then conduct a real search for a new head coach for Stanford coming up after that. And yeah, I think Frank Reich fits it perfectly. When I think of Stanford football and you were to tell me to make a college comp to Frank Reich, I would have said Stanford. So, yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, it's a guy that has, again, Stanford went through some tough times with the previous football administration, and it feels like they just want to clean house almost
They've been awful.
Completely. Yeah, they have not been good. The culture in the program has been under question. Andrew Luck, the reason he's making all these decisions right now, they don't have an athletic director at Stanford right now. He's kind of the CEO of the football program, but he's making these decisions because I don't think they have a full-time athletic director right now, do they? They got to hire that too.
Do they not have Bernard Muir anymore or whatever his name is?
I think they're looking for a new one, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong on that, but that was the gist that I had heard talking to some folks the other day. And so they just need a restart. They need to hit the start over button. It's late in the year. He let his coach go. There aren't a lot of high-quality Division I coaches with long records of track success just laying around right now. So he goes to his buddy, who he knows is going to bring some integrity in there, knows a little bit of football, and they'll let it go for a year, and then they'll go find their permanent guy.
5 minutes, Rick Carlisle. Again, for those that missed it yesterday, Purdue got their first portal edition, the big Australian Oscar Clough, going from the Sunshine Coast to, the Tippecanoe River, whatever. That's where he will be headed up in West Lafayette there. For those curious about old Oscar, very high-level rebounder. Think traditional big dude, averaged 17 and 12 at South Dakota State. And so Matt Painter made it very clear they would dip in the portal. They would dip in the portal for front court help. At times, Will Berg and Caleb First were, I would say, non-threats would be a compliment on the offensive end of the floor. So enter Clough into the fold here. Be curious how, he plays alongside Trey Kaufman-Renn or Daniel Jacobson and that fit. And then the other Purdue news locally yesterday, Miles Colvin into the transfer portal here. I just felt like watching Colvin, you're kind of left wanting a little bit more. A flash or two, but just kind of left wanting a little bit more out of him.
What do you think he wants to do in the transfer portal, and was it all his decision, do you think?
Boy, I mean, those are great questions. Yeah, part of me kind of looks at him like, okay, could he go down a level, if you will, and become more of a double-digit guy? That's probably where I'm at with that.
Like
but
maybe headed somewhere in the Missouri Valley, something like that?
Yeah, sure. Anytime I think locally, you always think back to, whatever, Butler, IUPY, like IU Indy, like Ball State, obviously a lot of local connections with Michael Lewis and Paul Casaro, et cetera. But he also was, he was a rotational guy on one of the best teams in college basketball. So, could he go do that somewhere else?
Yeah.
Is that something that he would want? So, a little bit of portal news for Purdue, which we're not used to saying here in the Matt Painter era.
All right, coming up in a moment, the weekly chat with the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, Rick Carlisle. We'll spend some time with Kevin Bowen. We'll be right here for all of it on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Tuesday, 8 o'clock. And you know what that means. Certainly one of the wilder months of basketball I have ever seen for the Indiana Pacers. Just concluded last night, and it was another one. 111-109. They are now on the verge of clinching a top 6 spot here in the postseason and inching closer to getting home court here. Coming up in round 1 to talk more about all of that. We always appreciate our chats with him every Tuesday, typically at 8 o'clock. He's the head coach of the Pacers. He is Rick Carlisle. Coach, good morning to you. How are you?
What's happening?
I look at last night, and if you would have told me 24 hours ago, no Matherin, no Turner, season high in turnovers for Tyrese, Pascal is one of his worst shooting nights of the year, I would have not felt great about it. You guys found a way. Specifically, what was the difference for you there in the fourth?
Well, the first half wasn't good. We just our energy was off. We were turning it over. Couldn't get the crowd into it. Sacramento, had been blown out 2 nights earlier by Orlando. They really got it together for us, and they're in a slugfest in the West for play-in position with I think Phoenix and Dallas. So they're really trying to win. And you look at their roster. I mean, they've had a bit of an up and down year, but they have got some real weapons over there, with DeRozan, Levine, Sabonis, Monk, and a guy that I think is really underrated, and that's Murray, not to mention a few others. And so at halftime, we were down 6. We talked about it. I mean, we just needed to get our energy together, get more fight in the game, obviously reduce turnovers, and get the crowd into it. And that's pretty much what happened. I mean, the third quarter, we hit a lull and got down by as many as 14 or 16, but it just kept going. We were down timeouts. It was a lot of challenging things, but resilient group as we've seen all year. And, Tyrese found a way to hit a huge shot to finally give us a lead late fourth, and then Pascal hit the one that probably gave us the separation we needed.
People that watch the highlights, they're going to see the Tyrese shot. They're going to see, obviously, Pascal, a huge defensive possession as well on the prior trip. I felt like that smaller lineup you went to, Coach, gave you some life, though. Obi Toppin, Jarris Walker specifically kind of gave you a little bit of injection there, maybe kind of late third quarter. What was the thought process kind of turn into that group? Because that's probably not a lineup that you've gone to a whole lot.
We like to play big. And I'm a believer that playing big is your best chance to be a good defensive team. But we had talked a lot before the game about rotation, knowing that Miles was not going to be available. And, what would going small look like? And there were things about it we didn't love. For example, we go small. There's a chance they go small and put Trey Lyles at 5, and that's a dynamic lineup with their second unit. Now, our small ball 5s, in the case of last night, it was Obi and Pascal matched up on Sabonis. I mean, those are tough matchups on the boards, So, but what happened was in the fourth quarter, we were able to find a level of force and presence and did a good job on the ball, and finally we're able to start getting stops without fouling and putting DeRozan on the free throw line. And we just became energized. And look, Tyrese and Pascal were huge in the fourth quarter, but Obi Toppin, I mean, come on, last night, guy goes for 18. He hit a bunch of threes, particularly when he was playing 5. And he was a major, major difference maker in that game.
Yeah, it certainly was. Pacers get the win last night, 111-109. Homestand continues coming up tomorrow night. Charlotte, Friday, Utah. Rick Carlisle with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, watching you guys over the past month, I've thought I was going to need another hair transplant. Frankly, the entertainment level's been thrilling, but the stress level's also been very high. I'm curious, do you feel that, or is it just kind of robotic almost? Night in, night out. There's 82 of these. I've been through X amount of years being a head coach in the league? Or, like, did you feel specifically in March, wow, we have had some wild games, comebacks, final minute moments, all of that?
Yeah, I expect these games to be very difficult. I expect them to be close. If you expect, those kinds of outcomes and those kinds of situations, then certainly you're not surprised. We spent a lot of time with our team in our prep sessions recently on late game situations. And look, I mean, Charlotte coming in here tomorrow, we've had trouble with them all year. They've been a tough matchup. With the 3-point shooting, Brandon Miller, all that stuff, and we're really going to have to bear down on those guys. And then it's Utah on Friday, and what we're seeing with all these teams that may not have very good records, but when they go on the road, they play a fearless attacking game, nothing to lose, and they come at you, and everybody goes hard. Like the 2 Brooklyn games a week and a half ago, whatever they were, one of them was a really rough one because it was coming off a back-to-back the previous night with Dallas at home. And that was a game that may have even gone to overtime. And so, they're all slugfests. I mean, that's really the expectation. And look, this is fine because while you'd like to have easy wins, from time to time this time of year, this kind of activity is good preparation for playoffs.
You feel good about Ben and Miles being back with you tomorrow night?
I have no idea. No idea. Ben, I don't know. Won't have a better idea until tomorrow. I certainly hope we have them available because, with the Pacer ecosystem, as I've mentioned many times, we're much better when we have all of our pieces.
Matherin calf injury, Turner illness, their absence last night. Again, Rick Carlisle with us here. Hornets, as you mentioned, coming up tomorrow night inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. You have hit on that ecosystem quite a lot. I mean, I think naturally we probably understand what it means, but like specifically when you're describing that as your basketball team, like what do you mean by the Pacers ecosystem?
Well, some teams in the league are constructed in a way that they're, superstar heavy. And so they have 2 or 3 guys that are like the main guys, and those guys get the majority of the touches and so on and so forth. And we're not built the same way. Our star players, Tyrese and Pascal, are guys that benefit from a system where they're surrounded by guys that enhance their abilities. And so, Tyrese is better when he has guys top to bottom that run. Pascal is better when he's with guys that do the same, and so we're better as a team when we have Miles Turner, who's a stretch 5, who's an elite stretch 5, and so not having Miles last night was going to present challenges. Last time we played Sacramento, I mean, I don't know if you remember it or anybody remembers it, but it was a game in December, and Miles played Sabonis very, very well. I mean, Domas had a bunch of rebounds, but he had a low-scoring game, and he had a lot of missed shots around the basket because Miles' positioning was elite in that game. So, not having him last night threw things into a situation where we had to be ready for anything.
Rick Carlisle with us here. Pacers, again, 1 game away. Either, I think, a Hawks loss or a Pacers win away from clinching top 6 seed here as we reach the end of the regular season and in position to get home court for round 1. Coach, I do want to go back to last week. You guys put up that insane number of 162 against the Wizards. You elected at the end of the game to, I think, tell your guys on the floor to take I believe 3 shot clock violations. Now, there were some, mostly fans, of course, wanting to see you continue to try and push. I believe the NBA record, you were 2 threes away from getting to that record. You elected not to go for that. Was that a basketball god thing? Was that simply a sportsmanship thing? What led to that decision?
Well, it's a respect thing to me. I've been watching Washington all year, and they've had some of the most amazing wins. I mean, they've won at Detroit, they've won at Minnesota, they've won at Denver, they've won at, I don't know, one or two other places that you would roll your eyes and go, holy cow, how are they doing that? I mean, they play hard. We were in a ridiculously difficult game at Washington the game before the All-Star break. We were down 19 in the third quarter and really pulled a miracle to get back even and get it to overtime and find a way to win. Brian Keefe has been a career assistant coach in the NBA who's had head coaching aspirations. It just has never quite happened, and he's gotten his shot. And I got to tell you, he's doing one of the best jobs in the league. And these teams that are developing, what they're going for is a high level of competitiveness, getting their young guys experience. For a good chunk of the season, they had veterans like Valanciunas and Brogdon playing some, and now in that game they had Chris Middleton play the first 14 out of 17 minutes, and then they shut him down for the rest of the night. Presumably to keep him going, keep him with opportunities to play, tuned up, all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, look, some nights you get really fortunate, and the ball is just going in. I mean, Tyrese got us started in that game, and we're coming off a really tough loss on national TV in a late starting game the night before against the Lakers, and we hit 6 or 7 or 8 threes in the first quarter, and then just kind of keep it going. And at the end of the game, you score 170 points on a team like that, it's going to become a huge story, and it's going to be an embarrassing thing. And we got to play these guys again. We got to play them a week from tomorrow at home. So, So I don't, we'd set enough records in that game, with 27 threes and whatever the franchise record was for points. I mean, and so, yeah, that was the choice. That was the decision. I don't know that Pacer fans were that upset about it. It seemed like the Washington fans were more upset about it when we were in the arena that night, which seemed a little odd to me. But whatever the case, that was the reasoning and the thinking.
It's like the perfect game in baseball. You start cheering against your own team after you've been there for 6 innings and it's happening against you. Did you know you were 2 threes away from the NBA record?
No, but we set a franchise record for threes, and
right.
I think we set a franchise record for
Furphy hit the one to get you that 24-3. I think it was.
Yeah, and like Furphy hits one, and then Quentin Jackson hit one like 35 seconds later, 40 seconds later. So anyway, that's you asked the question, I gave you the best answer I could.
I appreciate it. A couple of minutes left here. Rick Carlisle, Pacers again. They got the Hornets coming up tomorrow night. I feel like this time of year, Coach, you hear it probably more from college coaches. You handle a team differently late in the season. You dial back practice time, et cetera, et cetera. I realize NBA, your schedule doesn't allow for, frankly, much practice time at all. Do you try and manage your guys differently as the schedule reaches late stretches of March into April?
Yeah, it's a constant monitoring of, where are we as a team? What do we need? Where is the fatigue factor? Where is the energy? Those kinds of things. Frequently this time of year, we'll have something that we call pro days. And pro days are, you're required to come in, get treatment on your body, make sure that, you're staying tuned up, get a lift in so that you can continue to try to stay strong. And then, on the court, you got to get what you need. You got to get some shots. If you're a guy that's low minutes, we may have a pickup game with our interns and our low minute guys. And the starters, one of your jobs is to stay tuned up with the appropriate amount of shooting and maybe some film work with an assistant coach or something like that. But you're not to be in there over grinding and becoming more fatigued. So today is going to be one of those such days. And then, tomorrow, our prep sessions are late afternoon for game days at home. So guys will be able to sleep in the morning, however they want to handle their day. And then at 3:50, that's 3:50 in the afternoon, we start our prep session for Washington. And then, like tonight, we have a season ticket holder event. And, this time of year, our support people are looking for the best possible days to do these kinds of events, whether they're charity type situations with stuff going to, I don't know, shelters, et cetera, like that, or something with season ticket holders or corporate sponsorships, And so, there tend to be things like tonight's a thing, and, there may be an autograph signing, on Thursday or something like that. But you got to get all this stuff done, and our guys are great about it. They appreciate the support of our fans. A few of these guys were in here the first year I was here where, we didn't have a full house every night. We were struggling. We were a 25-win team, and then it's gone 25-35. It was, I guess, 47 last year, and this year we're trying to go above that. So we got a good group. They understand the importance of all those things, but there's kind of an explanation of everything that's going on this time of year, and then there's the playoff race too.
Specifically, have you noticed any fatigue with Pascal lately? Obviously, he hit the huge shot last night and a big defensive possession. He hasn't been his typical highly efficient offensive self. Have you noticed anything with him in the last couple of weeks?
Well, I think this time of year, right now, you're looking to keep minutes reasonable. Like the two previous games, he played in the mid-20s in Washington, and it didn't go well in Oklahoma. So I don't think anybody got over 30. That helps a little bit. If you're asking, would I love to get him a game off? I would love to. I just don't see where we can afford to do that right this particular moment. But days like today are really important for him, and that that he gets his appropriate amount of work in, but doesn't overdo it.
Rick Carlisle with us here again. Pacers and Hornets coming up tomorrow night inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Coach, we appreciate your time as always. We'll end with this. When we talked last Tuesday, you were all aboard, understandably, the Boiler bandwagon. Certainly, it was a great game inside of Lucas Oil Stadium on Friday night. As we transition to the Final Four, I was trying to think, I don't know if your coaching career would have overlapped with, obviously Bruce Pearl and Kelvin Sampson are the two longest tenured coaches in this Final Four. I guess with Kelvin at all, whether it's Jarris Walker in the draft process, whether it was his NBA stint, have you ever overlapped with Kelvin Sampson at all, or I guess know him?
Yeah, I do know him, and we practiced at University of Houston's practice facility last year. So it was during preseason. So it was Jarris's rookie year, and Kelvin came to practice. We actually had him speak to the team a little bit. He talked about Jarris. He's built a tremendous program there. Obviously, Bruce Pearl. I've never met him personally. I have great respect for him from afar because he builds these amazing programs with with these athletic guys that just go so hard. And one thing, this was an odd situation, but I guess when he left Tennessee, there was a chance that he was going to coach in the G League. Donnie Nelson, who was our president and general manager, was talking to him about the possibility of coaching the Texas Legends, which was the Mavericks G League team. So he and I had a couple of conversations on the phone about it. And he's as expected, engaging, charismatic guy. Decided not to coach for a couple years or whatever it was, and then he came back to Auburn, and he's got their program in in a historic position. So, yeah, those guys, I do know and have great respect for.
Tomorrow night, the homestand continues, and last night, without Matherin, without Turner, again, Halliburton uncharacteristic a bit, even Pascal, the Pacers get it done there finally in the fourth quarter. Coach, congrats on the win. We look forward to another regular season combo coming up, and hopefully some playoff ones as well in the month of April.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Rick Carlisle, Payless Liquors Hotline. Interesting on that Siakam note there. We'll monitor that here over the final half dozen games or so if the Pacers, they have one back-to-back left coming up next week if they can get him a night off. Again, Hornets tomorrow, Jazz on Friday. Fran Fraschilla going to join us at 9. We'll ask him a little bit about Darren DeVries. I know he's got a Purdue thought or two. The great college basketball analyst from ESPN will join us. Before that, let's check it down. All right, let's put a bow tie on last night. The final score, 111-109. Jeff Rickard, it seemed like the Pacers had about 37 shots to tie the game or take the lead in the fourth quarter. Finally, with about 2 minutes to go, it was their $200 million guy hitting one on a step back. And then Pascal Siakam, who didn't have a very efficient night, big-time defensive possession, and then he iced the game with that final three.
I was impressed by the patience of Chris Denari on the broadcast. He and Quinn were making note of the fact that here's another opportunity to take a lead. Here's another opportunity to take a lead. But, man, you could hear the relief in their voices and the excitement in the crowd when first Halliburton hit that go-ahead three and then Siakam kind of put it to bed, as Rick was telling you just a moment ago.
Aaron Nesmith, clutch free throws down the stretch. I thought that his two-way night should be commended as well. And, again, like I said to Rick, I thought Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker, that small ball lineup was huge. On a night without Turner, Bryant was struggling. You needed to throw a curveball at the Kings to erase that deficit, and they did. So one game, that is the magic number. Either Hawks loss or Pacers win, they will clinch a top 6 seed. All right, Major League Baseball from yesterday actually had some historic nights, certainly for the Cubs. I know Mark Dykton someone needs to mention that I led off with the Cubs when Mark Dykton makes his comeback. They roll 21 hits for them against the AAA team that is the Sacramento A's. Carson Kelly hits for the cycle. Did I see the first Cubs cycle since Mark Grace? Is that correct?
It's been a while. That's the way I read it last night. But I just want to, why are you leading with the Cubs when the Reds had a big night?
Mark Grace barreled into third base on a triple. I'd love to see a highlight of that. Ellie De La Cruz, no shock there. 2 homers, 7 ribbies, 14-3. The Red Legs win as now we get into the second week here of Major League Baseball and opening night over at Victory Field. You'll probably need a layer or two, but it looks like Mother Nature will cooperate precipitation-wise. They've got the Iowa Cubs in town. Remember, they've got that deal. If it doesn't meet 60 degrees, you can still get a ticket to another April game. I think tonight you might hit that sweet spot, 55, 57. Still be able to watch them play, but also get a ticket to another April home game.
Never had a bad day at an Indians game. Ever.
Indeed.
Ever.
I think we're going to take my dad there, a little Father's Day present.
Ooh, I like that. All right, coming up in just a moment, we continue to talk about all the Pacers news after last night's win and where they are in the playoffs. Also a big day at the NFL owners' meetings, what we learned yesterday from Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen as they were speaking. Kevin, we may have some questions for you to answer before the end of the hour as well. Fran Fraschilla coming up top of the hour. It's coming up next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Tuesday morning, Victory Tuesday for the Indiana Pacers as they continue to make a nice little push here. Kev, your big takeaways from your conversation with Rick Carlisle just a moment ago?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Rick was in, a good mood with how they were able to finish that game last night. I guess two things. That Walker top in the lineup, Turner doesn't play last night, so he contributes to it. But is that a wrinkle you can go to in the postseason? I'm trying to think specifically, what a matchup would look like. I don't know. If you're playing the Bucks and Lopez is off the floor, is that a little bit more of a small ball lineup? Or even with Lopez on the floor, do you feel like you can really counter with them and do something differently? And then, he said at the end there, would he love to give Pascal Siakam a night off? He would. Okay, how does that look like? Siakam has been, and we hold him to such a high standard because he is an incredibly efficient offensive player. Mm-hmm. He was an all-star for a reason this season. But the last 2 weeks, he has been nowhere near what we are used to. So when and do you give him a night off? Remember, Siakam has missed one game with the Pacers over the last year plus, and that one game is due to a personal issue. He is not a load management guy. He's not a night off guy. He's not missing a couple weeks here or there. That has not been him at all with the Pacers. But, Rick, definitely said that that's something they could look at. So when does that happen? Opponent-wise.
He also didn't feel like he was comfortable doing it right now, is what he said.
Well, but opponent-wise, tomorrow night or Friday, the Hornets and the Jazz are, they're missing, Brandon Miller's out for the year. They're missing some key guys. So I guess how do the
Melo
Pacers...
Ball's out for the year for the Charlotte Hornets, too.
Right. So how do the Pacers handle that?
Pretty interesting. Right now, with 7 games remaining.
Also, let me just sneak one more in there. Sorry to interrupt, Jeff. I know a lot of people were curious about the whole basketball gods thing with the Wizards and deciding to, not go for that record. I thought Rick's answer was interesting on that. So for those that missed the interview, Corbin will have that up on the podcast.
Yeah, he talked about it for 2 minutes, and then he kind of said, that's the best answer I can give you. So
I was like, well, thank you for giving us
it was good.
2 minutes on it.
He was terrific. Right now with 7 games to go, it looks like their most likely first-round opponent is probably going to be the Detroit Pistons, Kev.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. That's what, Jalen Duren?
Yeah, Jalen Duren
more.
And Isaiah Stewart up front there. Tobias Harris.
Yeah, I was trying to think back to
by
the
way.
center. Yeah. Could you go a little bit smaller with that group? Obviously, it'll be for a lot of those Pistons, and it'll be their kind of first playoff experience. So how do they handle that? So Pacers very well could not only have a top 6 seed, but they could actually have the 4 seed clinched by the end of this week.
Be nice.
So we'll see how that continues to play out. I think once you get to that point, once you're kind of locked into a seed, I have no issue in guys resting.
Oh, let's go. That's when you do it. All right. I know Mark Dykton, when he's here, always has questions for us. Corbin Lingenfeld also has some has some questions for us as he's curious about some of the other things going on around the rest of the world of sports right now. Corbin, what's on your mind today, buddy?
The NFL owners are expected
This
to
is like
vote.
knockoff. I got to know here.
Sort of. This is the Lingerfelter.
This is I want to know.
Yeah.
The NFL owners are expected to vote on the status of the tush push today. Do you think the play should be allowed moving forward, or is it time to ban the Eagles? Sure thing.
It feels like the rest of the league is mad at the Eagles because the Eagles can do something that they can't do consistently. They talk about player safety. You're telling me there's player safety when guys start at the line of scrimmage as opposed to running downfield 20 miles an hour at one another with a 20-yard head start? It feels like they're just mad that the Eagles have a guaranteed 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, or 4th and goal play to go to. I don't like that.
Zero issue with it whatsoever. Get better at it. That's what I would say to the other 31 NFL teams. Both ways. Get better at run it. The Colts tried to run it. They tried to run it in the first game of Steichen's career, and they came back and ran it, I think it was in the Germany game, if I'm not mistaken, a couple years ago, and they just didn't run it well. So just get better at the play. I actually thought Chris Ballard's answer yesterday hit a lot of the nail on the head for me of can you show me evidence where there are more injuries on this play?
You haven't seen it.
Once you can show me that, then I think we have a real conversation. Outside of that, I just think it's sour grapes.
I think the NFC East is leading the push to ban the tush push.
Was it the Packers? It's the Packers, right?
Could be the Packers, yeah.
I think they were the one that came up with the resolution.
Mm-hmm. All I know is it's effective for the Eagles. It doesn't seem to be as effective for anybody else. It's just whining, if you ask me. Just whining.
Alrighty, the UConn women are headed to the Final Four for the 24th time in school history and for the 16th time in the last 17 years. They'll be looking for national championship number 12. Is Gino Aurema the best college basketball coach of all time?
I think you've got to start putting him in the conversation. All he ever does is win for the last 2.5 decades, KB. And I know that there's an imbalance for a long time for the top women's teams as opposed to every other team. But even in today's world, he just keeps finding players. He keeps recruiting the best players, keeps coaching them up. Every time you turn around and there's an Olympic team, there's 2 or 3 UConn players on there. They become some of the best players in the WNBA. Yes, he gets the top talent, but he certainly seems to know what to do with it once he gets it, doesn't he?
Yeah, this to me is probably a no-brainer. I mean, it's not like UConn women were this, incredible juggernaut before his arrival, and he's created largely that imbalance, if you want to label it like that. Now, it has been a while since they've won a title, and obviously Ashton Shade from a local angle. We'll see if they get it done, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, who else would even be in the realm of the conversation? To me, it seems like pretty much a no-brainer.
It's just been amazing what he's been able to put together. So yeah.
All right. The Red Legs, Ellie De La Cruz erupted for a single, a double, and 2 home runs in the Reds' win over the Texas Rangers on Monday night. What made that stat line interesting is that Ellie De La Cruz used the new torpedo bat, the same one the Yankees have used to light up the American League so far this season. Should the new big-barreled bat still be allowed?
Kevin, I'll let you go first.
Gosh, boy, this is messy for me. Because I just took a big old dump all over this story yesterday when I heard it was just the Yankees doing it, and then my beloved Ellie uses it last night. And next thing you know, now I have to love it, right? Can I go spin cycle? Can you erase all that audio? Can we get Mark Dykton to erase the podcast from yesterday? I love it. It's great. This is awesome. It's almost as good as, have you guys seen the beer bat stand that now we're seeing out there?
Yes.
You can just have that beer bat standing up the whole time. You don't have to hold it. I mean, nothing more lazy,
I
frankly.
thought of Mark Dykton and you when I saw that
from
thing.
our entire country, but I absolutely love that. That's almost as good as the torpedo bat. So yes, every Reds batter should have that thing.
Oh, here's the thing. Major League Baseball said they looked at it when it was presented to them, and it fits within the parameters of what a bat should be as far as weight, barrel size, all that stuff. So why not at this point in time? I mean, it's probably amazing to me that it took somebody from MIT to be hired by the Yankees to figure this out this long.
By all means, if it helps the Reds actually hit the ball and stay away from their bullpen, sure. I mean, it's only a matter of time before, what are we going to get to Earth Day or Easter here coming up, and now every player in Major League Baseball is going to use it?
Well, we've seen it for a week now. Let's see. Let's revisit this at the All-Star break, all right? Get some
Are we going
sample
to
size in there.
pitchers to rub some stuff on the ball now
Yeah.
to counter it?
I got one more question for you, Kevin, because I saw this earlier this morning. Notre Dame star guard Olivia Miles, who's projected to be a top 2 lottery pick in the WNBA,
Yeah, this is big news yesterday.
is entering the transfer portal and will forego the 2025 WNBA draft, according to a couple of national sources yesterday. Is this just a case of demonstrating that the WNBA doesn't really pay a lot of money, and if I can get 4, 5, 6 times as much from a college to stay and play for my senior year, that's what I'm going to do?
I mean, Caitlin Clark made what, like $70,000 last year?
Yeah.
With the Fever?
Well, she made a little more money outside.
Right. No, I'm
yeah.
just talking strictly her WNBA
Correct.
contract. Her
Yeah.
Indiana Fever contract was like in the $70-something thousand range. I mean, what?
Yeah, if you can make 200, 250, 500,000 doing something else,
And
why
I
not
guess
do
for
it?
those unfamiliar, Notre Dame will be paying Hannah Hidalgo, their point guard, who is, probably the next star, not named Juju Watkins. I mean, she already is one of them in college basketball. So, it gets into a little bit of those finances when you start to think about NIL and all of that. But yeah, I would say to answer the question, it is strictly WNBA economics, which, Jeff, this might be the final year for it because the new CBA is going into effect by all accounts for the 2020, that'd be the 2026, 2027.
Right.
I guess they just play in one calendar year. So 2026 season. So I do think you won't have this issue as much moving forward. Now, this is, again, I think a rare one, but
Get it while you can.
this is certainly WNBA economics 1,000%. Old CBA is probably the best way to put it.
Now, do your Notre Dame Fighting Irish pony up and match what anybody else is offering right
I
there,
just-
or is she just kind of on the open
I
market?
just assume they're paying Hannah Hidalgo a ton of money. I mean, Notre Dame, obviously, I think they were just under the impression that she'd go pro.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't – I mean, hell, we need a lot for the men's program right now, too. So, I don't know.
All right, coming up in just a moment, we'll revisit what happened at the NFL owners' meetings yesterday out of the mouths of Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard Along with Kevin Bone, I'm Jeff Rickard. James Boyd is on assignment at those owners' meetings. Corbin Lingenfelter is in here making it all go today as we continue at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Talking Colts as the NFL owners' meetings continue down in West Palm Beach, Florida. Hoping to get James Boyd here in a moment on the Fan Morning Show, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And KB, we talked earlier about Shane Steichen meeting with the media yesterday, and everybody wants to know about this open competition between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, and he basically he and Chris Ballard both yesterday just kind of doubled down on it. Man.
No. I was afraid of this today.
What were you afraid of?
Why do I hate today?
Because it's April Fool's.
This is incredible.
Now what?
I can't believe that.
What'd you just find?
I feel like someone just planted this right on my lap.
What do you have it?
A tweet from Tiger Woods. Now, what's our most recent Tiger Woods news?
That he's in love and looking forward to spending
but what
life
about
in
his
journey.
physical health? Remember what happened a couple weeks ago?
No.
Ruptured the Achilles. Remember that?
Oh, that. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going a month
ago.
It's
a long laundry list. James Boyd will get to you in just a second. Tiger Woods has tweeted this on April Fool's Day. I can't believe I'm saying this, but a few weeks after rupturing my left Achilles, the sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber, plus the explosive lifts my doctors and trainers have me ready to play the Masters next week. Can't wait. See you all in the course.
You're not buying that today, huh?
I mean, what? That just...
Kevin is not going to be able to function for the rest of the show. You know this, right?
It's just sickening to me. James Boyd, there's no worse holiday than April Fool's.
I mean, my goodness, man. You like the Grinch of April Fool's and something like that.
Just toying with the emotions. We're going to get Purdue fans is going to get Braden Smith enter the transfer portal. Pistons fans are going to plan a fake Shams account. Tyrese Halliburton's being shut down for the rest of the season today. We're going to get all those today.
Hey, just don't believe it. I mean, look, when you're a liar like me, I lie for a living, so it's a pretty normal day for me.
But James, the problem for KB here is he so desperately wants that tweet to be true.
Is it true?
Oh my goodness, here we go.
Gosh,
get KB off the floor in the studio, please.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
I need to cope, Jeff. You talk to James Boyd.
All right, James Boyd joining us from the owners' meetings in West Palm Beach, Florida, on the Payless Liquors hotline this morning. You've been there for, almost 48 hours. What is the big takeaway you have from the Indianapolis Colts portion of the program?
I think the biggest thing is kind of just piggybacking off yesterday. They're going to split the reps between Anthony and Daniel Jones. And I think, what Chris Ballard said after we talked yesterday, when he basically said, hey, whatever happens with this competition, with Anthony, is it the end? No. It's not the end for him. We're not giving up on him. But I'm like, man, that all sounds great until, you have to make a decision on his contract and his future. So right now, I would say I feel a lot more open to this competition thing than I had before, just considering the quotes that we got from yesterday and the context that we were able to get from Shane and Chris Ballard. Again, it seems like this is going to be a legit competition, which, to me, sounds pretty crazy considering Anthony was number 4 pick just 2 years ago, but I guess they didn't bring Daniel Jones in for nothing.
Yeah, James, I found that interesting that you wrote that you feel like that you do believe maybe your opinion has changed a bit, and you think it is a realer competition than maybe you once thought. Is it simply if Daniel Jones is 51% and Anthony Richardson's 49%, Daniel Jones is the starter? Do you still think it's like that, fair of a competition, if you will? Or do you think Daniel Jones has to substantially be better than Richardson?
I still think he has to be substantially better, but I'm more open to that potentially happening before the season starts. Because as I told you all before, I was like, oh, Anthony could do whatever every day and throw the ball in the dirt, and who cares because it's not a real game. But it sounds like they're going to be evaluating this stuff, as they should probably, with just step by step, day by day. And actually, Ballard was asked yesterday, is the best case scenario for Anthony Richardson to win the job? That way you have a long-term answer at the position. And he said, I think the best scenario, this is the quote, I think the best scenario is that we win football games. That's the best scenario no matter who the starting quarterback is. To me, that's what it comes down to. You figure out, all the rest as you go along. Would it be nice if we knew we had an established starter for the next 10 years? Damn right it would. There are points where we thought we were going to have that a couple times and didn't, but you move along.
A couple of weeks ago at the Combine, James Boyd, we had a chance to talk collectively as a station to Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. Did you learn anything yesterday that you didn't hear back at the Combine?
Well, I would say we can put the Braden Smith moving inside to bed. Shane Steichen said yesterday pretty definitively he believes Braden Smith is a right tackle. He's not a right guard. And so when it comes to the right guard answer, They were both pretty vague on that. I asked, hey, could you move back Gonzalez inside? I know he was kind of scouted as a guard coming out of college, and he said that's a possibility, but they're still exploring their options. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up drafting their future right guard and to a certain extent. They talk about adding veterans, but there's not a lot of great veterans out there left on the market as is if you're talking about starters. And so I would expect offensive line to be a high priority in the draft. And also, I thought that, one of the biggest takeaways yesterday, Jeff, was on tight ends. I asked Chris Ballard, how do you evaluate the position? And the quote he gave was pretty, revealing, I thought. He said, look, we said we all want a game changer. I think every team in the league wants a game changer. We do like the players that we have, but we need a game changer. He mentioned Jack Doyle. And then he went on to say, he said, we need a game changer. Absolutely we do. Will it happen? I can't dictate the draft. And I was like, that's interesting. That means you're probably thinking about the draft and tight ends. And so we'll see how that cookie crumbles here, in about a month or so.
Yeah, I think they draft one very early. I think it's round 1 or 2 for a tight end. James Boyd, again, from The Athletic, of course, and with us here on the Fan Morning Show down at the owners' meetings in Palm Beach. Did I hear, center competition, too? Danny Pinter is competing with Tanner Bortolini for that job, the Ball State product, or is that just a little bit, hey, it sounds good in April?
No, I believe that is the case, and it's consistent. Shane Steichen mentioned that yesterday. And then I believe Danny Pinter said the same thing when he signed. He's like, I was told when I signed I would have a chance to compete for the starting job. And so we're looking at, a really different, offensive line outlook than in years past with the Colts. And so Chris Ballard said he's confident in the guys that they have, wants to bring some more in. But, yeah, it definitely could look a little different. And I don't think it's like Tanner Bortolini's job just right now. So we'll have to win a little bit, change a little bit. And so we'll see, if he's able to just retain that position.
Ideally, they name a starter when? At quarterback.
Or for center? Oh, I don't know. I would say by, after the first week of the preseason, you probably want to have it done by then.
So you play one preseason game, name one before preseason games 2 and 3?
That's what I think. Yeah, that way everyone's on board. You get that last, 3 weeks, month before the season starts to get your bearings. Everyone's on board, come to terms with whatever happened and go from there. So, we'll see with the clock will start ticking here pretty soon. I believe OTAs start on April 21st for the Colts. And so we'll be out there, tracking every single pass and every single interaction like we do when it comes to quarterback competition.
For what it's worth, Richardson didn't play in preseason game number 2 last season. I would say if you're going to have a real competition, that cannot happen this year. I would think you would need both of them to be playing a whole lot here in the preseason. So that'll be another storyline to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. I mean, it could, like I said, happen that first week of the preseason. They could stretch it out even longer, but they told us, like most coaches, we don't have a timeline. Yes, you do. You cannot tell me Shane Steichen, as detailed as he is, does not have a timeline on when he wants to have an answer on this. So he just doesn't want to tell me, which is fine, because time will literally tell us, itself, because, at some point you got to pick a guy.
James, what, you coming home tomorrow, or what's the story?
Yeah, I mean, I have a flight, tomorrow, but I don't know if I'm gonna catch it. It's pretty nice out here, Maybe they got a golf course at the Breakers. They have a golf course out here, right across the street. Not even across the street. It's in the actual, villa of the hotel. So you can go look and sit on this balcony and look across, and people are just, driving down the green. So it's a different life out here for sure.
I found myself one time at the owners' meetings just staring at the maintenance crew cutting the grass on the golf course. You know how depressing and sad that was. By the way, the Tiger Woods tweet, April Fool's. Since when is Tiger Woods a comedian? It's not Tiger Woods.
He's lightening up, man.
It's not Saturday Night Live.
He's aging well. He's lightening up.
This day sucks.
Poor Kevin. His hopes were up and then dashed, even though he knew it was not
true. Now you have Robert Kraft meeting the media down there. James, you want to get some April Fool's jokes? Go ahead and slide it on that media scrum.
The closest thing that was for about 5 minutes, KB, he knew it wasn't going to happen. He knew it wasn't true, but he was hopeful. It reminded me of Jim Irsay and Andrew Luck for about 3 years. You know how Jim was always leaving the light on that back porch?
So sad. So true.
Here's one for you guys. This is not an April Fool's joke. This is God honest truth. I'm at this media party with all the coaches and GMs and media last night here at the Breakers, and I said excuse me to a woman who was kind of pushing us aside, weather was getting bad. So I said excuse me to this woman in front of me, and she turns around and it's Serena Williams. I was
wow.
excuse me, Serena. Like, and she was very polite. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I just walked past the goat. So, different life. Like I said, I feel like I'm in a Twilight Zone or something.
Now,
you
she
go.
was down there. Caitlin Clark was down there as well. Was that a flag football panel? Is that right?
I'm not exactly sure. I do know that Joel Erickson said that he ran into her. I bet she was here the day before everything kind of got started up, so I missed her by a couple of hours. But, yeah, man, I guess anybody who's who was there. So it was Guy Fury was here. J.J. Stankovic was trying to workshop some ideas of what he would say to him if he got a chance to talk to him. I don't know if he ever did. But, yeah, it was just like you'll see, like, a lot of football people, it's this random person who's, like, not that random, I guess, because they're famous and affluent, but – yeah, then there's me. The security guard stopped me yesterday, KB, and said, hasn't set in yet. And I was like, no, this is a different world for me. Like, people here are very, very rich.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, have a good one.
You too. James Boyd joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline. He's just a guy is like Tom Hanks in Big right now. He's just trying to take it all in, like what is happening around
Don't
me.
touch anything. Keep your hands to yourself, James Boyd. I've been in those hotels, and I just think to myself, oh, boy, how can I be as quiet as possible? But again, plenty to recap here from the Colts and the owners' meetings. And today usually gets a little quieter as the week moves along. Sunday and Monday, a little bit of rules competition stuff today, but I don't think Colts-specific news. Don't think we should have too much here upcoming. I would think, though, maybe a free agent move or two before the draft, but we are getting into that window where some of these veterans are like, wait a minute, I want to wait till the draft. I want to wait and see what you do in the draft and then kind of pick a spot.
All right, coming up in just a moment, we'll talk college basketball. Fran Fraschilla in town for the NIT, also, of course, an expert on everything NCAA. We'll talk about that as we continue the Fan Morning Show live from the DriveHubler.com studios on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Kevin Bowen, Jeff Rickard here today. We got James Boyd down at the owners' meetings in West Palm Beach. Always gets the good assignments. You ever notice that about JB? Always doing that.
Slightly different budget over there.
I will say this.
The old Athletic.
It provides us the opportunity to talk to one of our favorites this morning. So we got that going on, right? Fran Fraschilla, former head coach and current ESPN NBA college basketball analyst, joins us now on the Fan Morning Show. Coach, it's really good to catch up with you again, man. How you doing?
I am outstanding. Love coming to Indy. Got to St. Elmo's last night. Watched the regional final on Sunday. I'm living a great life, guys. We got some NIT basketball tonight and Thursday, and I'll be off to San Antonio on Friday. And happy to always talk hoop with you guys.
Hey, real quickly before we get into the NIT and the upcoming NCAA Final Four, we were having this conversation just a moment ago. Gino Auriemma has UConn's women back in the Final Four for the 16th time in 17 years and the 24th time overall, looking for a 12th national championship. Like, where is he in the discussion of all-time great college basketball coaches?
Taken for granted, I think, really. Although I think you got to kind of keep in mind that when Gino really started, Pat Summitt comes to mind. There were some pioneers before Gino and Pat, obviously some great coaches through the years, great players. I graduated in high school with Nancy Lieberman. We lived about 8 miles apart. So the women's game's come a long way, and obviously you guys are feeling it here in Indianapolis with the Fever and Caitlin Clark. But Gino's almost been taken for granted. Now, when Gino got it rolling, there wasn't the emphasis on being great at women's basketball among a lot of universities, and now I think that's completely changed. Women's basketball is at an all-time high. Others have now caught up. Dawn Staley certainly has done that. You're seeing Juju Watkins. Sadly, she got hurt. Caitlin, some of these great young players. So, again, Gino, I think, is kind of underrated, if you will, just because we almost have taken for granted that UConn has been such a juggernaut.
The great Fran Fraschilla with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline in town again for the NIT. Coming up, North Texas, UC Irvine. The first game, Chattanooga Loyola from Hinkle coming up tonight. And as Fran said, Thursday as well here for the NIT Championship up there at Hinkle. I want to go back to kind of what your grind is like during the college season mostly, Fran, and that would be the Big 12 and Darren DeVries, certainly in our market. You know full well what the job about an hour south of us right now means. Your thoughts on what Darren DeVries did in that one season at West Virginia?
Well, he's a really good coach. There's no question. I only got a chance to see them a couple times this year. I normally get to Morgantown, in the old Huggins days, 3 or 4 or 5 times. I got to Morgantown once, saw them in the Big 12 tournament. Certainly followed Darren because of my travels through Iowa up to Iowa State when he was at Drake. And excellent coach, kind of in the John Beilein mode, if you will, which may disappoint some Hoosier fans, but I think the true basketball fans understand what John did at Michigan when he was there. But now he's got in a whole new world order that we have here. He's basically putting together a whole new team. I think it's going to start with his son Tucker. My favorite line, I think we just laughed about yesterday. Last year, if you guys remember, right around this time, John Calipari said at his press conference, "I met with my team. There is no team." And that's what Darren's got right now. So I think because of the history of Indiana basketball and his reputation, and the fact that apparently they have a good supply of NIL money, he's going to get it going fairly quickly. I know how much Hoosier fans want this thing to get right, and I think he's going to do a really good job.
Fred, I'm just curious. You've broadcast or coached in probably every college basketball arena of note in America.
Yep.
What do you make, and how much do you enjoy broadcasting, being a part of Hinkle Fieldhouse?
Well, first of all, I thought you were going to. Let me just say, the loudest place I've ever been is in Assembly Hall. Mm-hmm. If you remember, and unfortunately, it was the year Tom Crean lost his job after OG Anunoby got hurt. My son was a graduate assistant at IU that year. Now with the Washington Wizards, where they're trying to, lose on purpose to get Cooper Flag, but that's a whole other story. But they beat North Carolina one night in December, and that was the loudest place I've ever been. Now, having said that, I absolutely love Hinkle Fieldhouse. I broadcast a incredible bracket buster game 15 years ago, I think, when Drake came in, ironically enough, with a terrific team. Brad Stevens had a great team. Obviously, I go back to my days watching Hoosiers. I was a Ohio University and Ohio State coach recruiting in Indiana. I had a lot of Indiana ties, so I understood what Hoosiers meant to the state. And being in Hinkle's unbelievable. And last year we had an incredible turnout of Indiana State fans that literally made it feel like we were refilming the movie as they went down to the wire and lost in an incredible game to Seton Hall. So I love coming into the building mainly because you guys probably can tell through the years I'm the ultimate basketball junkie. I understand the history and what Tony Hinkle meant, Bobby Plump, and his team. So I'm pumped. I'm pumped to get back in there, and we were in there yesterday for practice.
Gosh, I remember a bracket buster between Butler and SIU, Southern Illinois. That was a raucous atmosphere. I kind of miss those bracket busters now that you bring that up.
They were cool.
Yeah, they were. Fran Frischella with us here again. NIT action. North Texas, UC Irvine, Chattanooga, Loyola coming up from Hinkle. Fran will be on the call. I want to go back to something you mentioned on Twitter. I think it was earlier this week. And that was, you brought up the name of Kanan Catchings, and I think in our market this time last year, we were getting ready for him to enroll at Purdue, and one of the more, if not the most heralded recruits in Purdue history. He elected to not go to Purdue very late in the process. I mean, we're talking summer registration, if you will. Goes to BYU, very spot duty there. I know you watched him a little bit, but you felt like if he would have stayed with Purdue, I should say. You felt like he could have been a lottery pick, and now here he is in the portal.
Yeah, first of all, I know Aunt Tamika pretty well from our, as a colleague at ESPN, and obviously know the history of the family. And listen, I'm as big a Matt Painter fan as there is. I think that I was surprised, and the story I got, and I think it's kind of accurate, was he decided to leave and then decided to want to come back, and Matt said, "Well, we're good, no thanks." And he had some great moments at BYU early in the year, and I think what happened was they tried to ride out the year with his terrific talent, potential talent. Certainly, he can really put the ball in the basket. He's really got a gift for scoring. But the reason BYU really ended up being as good as they were late in the year is they went back to their veterans. And when you're at BYU, you have real veterans. You have guys that come back on Mormon missions, and they're 23, 24, 25 years old, and I think that was the way their coaching staff went late. And now they've got a great player coming in A.J. Debanza, probably, arguably the number one player in the country. And as it relates to Purdue, when he left, I was like, damn, if it works. Like if you play at Houston, if you play at Purdue, if you play at Michigan State, you play for coaches who are going to coach you hard, you are going to get the most out of your talent. And I really do think that they needed him, certainly, because of who they lost last year, Purdue, and they certainly had a good year. But I think Kanan could have been a very good player this year, an all Big Ten player next year with a chance to obviously come out and turn pro, go in the first round. But I think the kid definitely has NBA talent. Now I hope he picks a school where the coach and the coaching staff is going to push him and try to get the most out of his talent. He's still got to be polished somewhat, but there's no question he's got NBA ability, and hopefully he makes a good choice.
I'm not saying this was the case with Kanan Catchings at all, but I felt like you made a really good point in regards to the portal the other day as well, of like, we probably aren't talking about, in some situations, whether it becomes public or not, dudes are getting cut from their current situation. Could you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a whole new level of what would you call it? Transactionalism. It's all business now. And, in the old days, and I say old days, I mean, I'm thinking about Michigan State this year. Didn't have a great team in terms of talent, but they have guys that have been in the program for 2 and 3 and 4 years. Matt's doing it at Purdue, certainly, with guys like, Braden Smith, who, after watching him again this year, I'm sure he's going to be in the NBA after next season. If you stay the course, like we're not used to this anymore. The kids now cut and run, and the coaches have the pressure on them that they've got a kid on their program that they've, made a significant NIL bet on, and that doesn't work out. There's only the money, believe it or not, is finite. Boosters are getting donor fatigue right now. And you even have to go to your boosters now and explain to them, yeah, we gave this kid whatever, 800,000, and he averaged 3 points a game. Well, that discussion with the player after the season is, look, we like you. You can stay, but we're going to give you a salary cut. Otherwise, you're going to have to leave. And, even a young man at Kansas, and there's some talk about Flory Badunga, as you guys know, started Kokomo.
Sure.
I don't know if he's leaving or not, but he's smart to put his name in the portal because Kansas is going to be desperate to keep him, and his agent is doing the right thing by throwing him out there because he might just raise the ante if he goes back to Kansas. But I think there's some talk that he might end up coming back to the state of Indiana. We'll see.
Fred, are we close to a point where, in the age of NIL, when that all gets settled out in a little more than a year from now, where we just sign guys to 2-year contracts, and you're going to be here, and this is what you're going to pay, and if you want to leave, there's a buyout?
Absolutely, it's got to happen. And I understand. I'm not a legal expert, but I understand that you can actually have student athletes collectively bargain without technically turning professional. Now, we know that they are semi-professional athletes at the power conference level, but I definitely think that we need to have CBA agreements, buyouts, contracts, 2-year deals. Hey, if a kid at Ball State's averaging 18 a game in the MAC and he's a sophomore from Kokomo and he wants to transfer to Purdue, maybe the contract calls for, $150,000 buyout. Maybe the player pays the buyout. Maybe Purdue pays it to Ball State. Ball State can then turn around, take the 150 and go buy another player, because that's really where we're heading. It's the old your father's college basketball and football is gone out the window, sadly, and we all have to kind of deal with it. It's a new normal. It's in some ways it's great for the kids. In some ways, I do believe it's destroying the fabric of college athletics, even though there are some cynics out there, like myself. When I coached at Ohio State in the 80s, there were teams in the league that were, breaking the rules. And as my wife says, because she went to SMU, a known football factory, NIL simply means now it's legal.
Brad, always great to catch up with you. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it as always. Have fun
Thanks,
at the games.
Guys. Two good games tonight. One thing about these 4 teams, the average amount of wins this year, 28. These are good basketball teams.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Coach.
You got it.
There you go. He's talking about North Texas at UC Irvine, not at, but against UC Irvine and Chattanooga, taking on Loyola of Chicago, and that'll be over at Hinkle Fieldhouse. So
yeah, watched a little bit of Loyola in the conference tournament there. Drew Valentine there played at Oakland, and so he is the head coach there. Obviously, Porter Moser, moved on to Oklahoma, and his name's been kind of floated around. So yeah, you get a little NIT action coming up tonight, and then the championship 9:00 up at Hinkle on Thursday. Anything else stand out to you? Owners meetings, Steichen, Ballard?
Just the fact that they've doubled down on this idea of open competition to the point where they're going to get equal reps, certainly in the OTAs, and I don't know what that means for the regular camp.
When would you want to have a starter?
After the first week of camp.
So before any preseason games?
I think you have you're going to have to start somebody for that first preseason game. So de facto, I guess that would be it. But I don't think too much longer after that. I think you need to Would you go, hey, Richardson, you get the first preseason game. Hey, Jones, you get the second preseason game, and then make a decision? You can give him that, but you and I both know that after a complete run at OTAs and a full week of camp, the players themselves are going to kind of find out and know who the starting quarterback is. Coaches have told this to me over and over. The players always know first.
Yeah,
players always know.
I think
first.
Quarterback is arguably the position and probably not even arguably, no position differs more from a practice than a game than quarterback. You literally wear a different color jersey. You can't get touched in a practice.
No.
You can get touched in a game significantly. So that's where I'm a little torn on it. Last year I was looking over the schedule. The Colts had 10 practices before their first preseason game. And then after that, it really shrinks. They had a preseason game, they had 2 joint practices, then they had then they had a preseason game, and then they had just 1 joint practice before their final preseason game. And remember, you only get 3. I thought this would have been a good year, especially the quarterback competition now. This would have been a good year to have the extra Hall of Fame game. But, the Colts didn't, of course, get Adam Vinatieri in the Hall. I thought he could have been in the Hall of Fame. I thought it would have benefited them to have the additional preseason game, and now they don't. So, exactly when they name a starter. They named Richardson just after the first preseason game.
Let me ask you this.
Back with Gardner Minshew, so.
If they don't name one after the first two, what are you saying? That we really aren't sure if Anthony Richardson is our guy at all?
Oh, certainly.
As it goes on and on and on. I'm hoping that this whole thing is meant to really light a fire under him, right?
Is it more kick in the ass or is it more an actual competition?
I hope it's more kick in the butt is what I hope. Because
there is part of me that sits here and is like, certainly Richardson has not deserved to be treated like whatever C.J. Stroud is treated in Houston, or Bo Nix is treated in Denver, or Jaden Daniels is treated in Washington.
Like that.
Right. That is undoubtedly true. But I also can sit here and say I've seen Daniel Jones start 70 games. Richardson has started 15.
Well, what's the stat for Jones? 3-13 over the last 2 seasons.
Well, and one comment I didn't love yesterday was, and again, when James is back in studio, I want to make sure we have kind of bigger conversations because we're just getting kind of snippets of the audio here. But, there was a kind of a quote, I think it was Ballard, harped on how Daniel Jones looked against the Colts 2 years ago. Jeff, you or I could have played quarterback 2 years ago in that 2022 dysfunctional season like no other, and we would have looked good. Like, let's not put too much stock into one game against
the Giants' third-string quarterback looked pretty good against the Colts this past year, too.
Yeah, and again, that was against a competent Colts team. I'd argue in 2022, that was the heat of Jeff Saturday. Remember, that was a snow angel game. Yeah. Nick Foles convulsing on the field and nobody picking him up. So, because Daniel Jones looked really good in that game, was that a huge sway in your decision? I'd like to think 69 other starts of evidence would probably trump
Chris
one start.
Ballard says we're comfortable with Daniel Jones, especially in the short and intermediate. We need to push him to get the ball downfield a little bit.
Yeah, that's
more.
where they're different. Stylistically, they both can make plays with their legs. Certainly Richardson more than Jones, but Jones can definitely do that. But, Daniel Jones, you're going to get – this is dink and dunk. I think Joel A. Erickson made the analogy of, he's Gardner Minshew with legs. That's probably what you're getting here. Mm-hmm. And again, I'll reiterate what I said a little bit earlier in the show. When I've been out at Grand Park, and certainly fans that are out there watching it, there's times you watch Gardner Minshew or even Matt Ryan and you thought, oh, yeah, that's efficient. That's consistent.
That's before the bullets are live.
And again, it's dink and dunk. How far does that get you? So how all of it plays out will be fascinating to watch.
Yeah, the biggest problem from a defensive standpoint when you're playing a Daniel Jones or a Gardner Minshew is you can play so much closer to the line of scrimmage in so many different ways.
Yeah,
you're just not worried about somebody blowing the top off of you right now. And it just changes the dynamic of how everything gets run. All right, let's check it down as we let you know what's going on in the world of sports here in Indianapolis on this 9 o'clock hour. Yeah, good to talk about that NIT tournament with Fran Fraschilla a moment ago. Later on tonight over at Butler, it'll be North Texas taking on UC Irvine and Chattanooga going up against Loyola Chicago. Good basketball. If you're a basketball fan, as Coach said, average number of wins for these teams, even though they're not major programs. 28, not bad. They're all used to winning games.
No, certainly that is true as well. So again, that will be coming up tonight inside of Hinkle. Speaking of Butler, they did win out of the Crown yesterday in Vegas. So as we all thought throughout the season, the Butler Bulldogs will be the last team from the state of Indiana playing, and they'll play a game in the month of April. For those unfamiliar with the Crown is, basically Fox is running it, and if you make the semifinals, you make some money. Butler will be in the quarterfinals. That'll be tomorrow night against Boise, and they will try to make a little NIL. No Jameel Telford. He's elected to sit this out. Pierre Brooks had the game winner yesterday for Butler.
NBA last night, the Pacers, another win at the Fieldhouse. They came from behind in the fourth quarter, KB, beat the Sacramento Kings by a score of 111 to 109. That was closer than it might appear. It was a free throw game towards the last 2 minutes there, as it was 111-106 before Sacramento fired up a last-second buzzer-beating three to make the score closer. But the Pacers had trailed for most of the game until back-to-back threes with a little under 4 minutes to go from Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam, and they hung on for another win, and they're starting to play pretty good basketball, especially against teams they're supposed to beat.
Well, I think last one you chalk it up to, last day, if you'd have told me at the start of the day, okay, no Mathurin, no Turner, Halliburton has a season high in turnovers, and Siakam is one of his worst shooting nights of the year, I would have said, oh boy, that doesn't sound very good. But the Pacers were able to get it done last night. As Rick Carlisle said with us a little earlier, we'll see about Mathurin and Turner, their availability, and it sounds like over these final 6 or 7 games, they might explore an off night for Pascal Siakam.
I know there was still a ton of time remaining, and it was towards the end of the third quarter, but when Sacramento hit the three to go up 70-58, for a second I thought to myself, maybe they don't get this one tonight. Just for a second. I know there was a lot of time
when they
left,
missed a million threes in the fourth quarter to take the lead, I thought you were playing with fire here like no other. All right, Major League Baseball from yesterday. Big nights for the Cubs and the Reds. Mark Dykton and I can shake hands from afar here, celebrating both that. Carson Kelly, the cycle for the Cubs, and Ellie De La Cruz, worth the price of admission for the Redlegs. Speaking of the price of admission, opening night over at Victory Field. Weather-wise, looks decent, and you could get an additional ticket to an April home game here if that temperature is under 60 degrees, part of what the Indians do here in the month of April.
True story. Victory Field is literally the only venue on the planet that I will eat a hot dog.
Really?
I don't like hot dogs.
Oh, man, I'd eat I'm not a huge
it feels right to eat a hot dog at a AAA
I'll eat a hot
baseball
dog
game,
at
man.
any sporting event.
Yeah, I think I'm in the minority. I get that. But I don't know what it is about Victory Field. I always have hot dogs when I go there.
Oh, any ballpark. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been to a ballpark and not gotten a hot dog.
Every once in a while. I just,
Speaking of great food, Cluster Truck in the building here.
That's
Thank
what
you to
I'm
Evan
talking about
from
right
Cluster
there.
Truck. We did the Dunk Fest over the weekend. They've got this running on all tournament night games. The Dunk Fest, you get 2 pounds of chicken strips, cheese bread, chips and queso, churros, $29.99 on that. It is outstanding. And next week, while Tiger Woods breaks my heart, pimento cheese action on the menu at Cluster Truck for a little Masters next week.
I think
we got to get Will Haskett on, by the way.
I think he's already declared publicly that your heart is not the one he's interested in, Kevin.
Well, clearly, yeah. I think Tiger's had a lot of hearts he's been interested in over the years. Not a lot of long term, but certainly
was he really interested in the hearts though?
The short term. FAN is your promo code for Cluster Truck. Outstanding, piping hot food. You won't regret it.
All right, last thing. Women's Final Four is set after last night's games. UConn gets a win. UCLA wins. They're both in on one side of the bracket. The other side, South Carolina and Texas. So that's what's going on for women's college basketball.
The one non-1 seed on the men and women's side, Gino Auriemma and UConn. When I think of Cinderella, boy, John Calipari on the men's side and Gino on the women's side.
The little engines that could.
Something
Kevin.
like that.
All right.
McDonald's All-American game also tonight, by the way. Braylon Mullins and Jalen Harrelson, both in that 9 o'clock on ESPN.
All right, coming up in a moment, we'll take you back to West Palm Beach, Florida, find out what's going on at the NFL owners' meetings, and maybe take some of your comments as well. The Jiffy Lube stat of the day is on the way as we continue on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Pretty good morning this morning, although we were missing James Boyd. He did join us from the owners' meetings down in West Palm Beach. Had a chance to talk to Fran Fraschilla this morning. And, of course, Kevin had his weekly conversation with the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, Rick Carlisle. Been a very busy morning. And now, on top of all that, the cherry on top, nice delivery from the cluster truck, and we're all fat and happy this morning.
Excellent fan promo code there. Again, I recommend the Dunk Fest. Great little 4 different options you're going to get here during the tournaments. And so those are tournament days, Saturday through Monday coming up, or I think Tuesday if they extend the women's championship. And a little pimento cheese action next week. That makes me feel better after Tiger Woods did the April Fool's thing today.
Yeah, poor Kevin got his hopes up for a minute because Tiger Woods said miraculous training and recovery and everything else.
Tiger
and
can
he's
kiss
good to
my
go
ass.
for the Masters. Oh, you're mad at him now.
I mean, well, it was pathetic. Since when is Tiger a comedian?
Just having a little fun. Let's try to get it on the spirit.
You imagine, Pacers fans today, of all of a sudden you get a fake Shams account of or even Shams, if he's just like, oh, yeah, Tyrese Halliburton, they're going to sit him out the rest of the year, the back's flared up again.
You can't believe anything you read today. You already knew it. You talked about
Purdue
it this
fans,
morning.
Braden Smith's in the transfer portal, but, boom. Can you imagine all this? Indiana fans, Kurt Cignetti is taking the job. The Cowboys' job is opened up again. Kurt Cignetti to the Cowboys.
Oh, I think for us it would be Kurt Cignetti and Frank Reich on the same staff, right, over at Stanford.
November 8th, Frank Reich versus Bill Belichick this year.
And that's not an April Fool's joke, by the way.
Nothing says college football like that. Frank Reich becoming the interim at Stanford here.
How do you think Bill Belichick's going to do at the college level?
Gosh, I have no idea. Did they do a lot in the portal?
They did a little bit in the portal. I mean, North Carolina's had some talent. Mac Brown's had it rolling for a while. Yeah. Maybe not one of the top 5.
I don't know. There's part of me that
but
thinks he's one and done, and he just runs back to the NFL whenever they call. Doesn't the buyout drop a ton for him?
I don't know. Do you think he's kind of miffed at the NFL for being ignored for the last 2 years?
Yeah. I think that is true. But, some NFL team you would think would be desperate.
You would think so. But that's where we're at. Speaking of the NFL, the owners' meeting's continuing in West Palm Beach today. James Boyd, as we mentioned, is down there right now. Yesterday, Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard meeting with the media. We've talked a lot about how they've doubled down on that open competition at quarterback. But talk to me about what you heard from the offensive line portion.
Well, it sounds like, 2 starting battles, which I don't know if we picked center or thought center would be one. Now, again, they re-signed Danny Pinter. Tanner Bortolini was a 4th-round pick from Wisconsin last season. Now, Ryan Kelly, of course, is in Minnesota. I think and I certainly will speak for myself, was under the assumption they would just give those starting keys to Bortolini. You don't draft a center around 4.
And you thought he played, you and I had spoken a couple months ago, you thought he played okay.
Yeah.
Right?
I think he's fine. I got five starts. Now, there was a point, I think it was a Denver game last season. Kelly was out. Bortolini returned to practice, and they stuck with Pinter over Bortolini for a second straight week. Now, the Denver game didn't go very well offensively. Kelly returned in the next week, so that didn't become an issue. So I guess maybe I should have paid a little bit more attention to that. Now, again, there's a little bit of I'll believe it when I see it. Again, you don't draft a center around 4 if you're not going to start him. So we could have, which I can't recall the last time, Jeff, we entered an offseason with a true starting battle at 2 positions on the offensive line.
Not here, because that was the big strength that Chris Ballard thought he had built from his early days here was the offensive line.
You don't know who the starting quarterback is. So we don't know who the starting quarterback or starting center is right now on April 1st, and that is no April Fool's joke. So I thought that was something that stood out to me yesterday as well.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with rules changes and tweaks specifically coming up later on today as they talk about some broadcast things and Thursday night games and how often and how far in advance you can announce those things. But
we
also
have one rule change to throw out there.
Yeah, I was getting to that. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry about that. NFL owners approved a new overtime rule, so both teams are going to get the ball in overtime. So it's just like the playoffs. I think previously, I know we've had a lot of iterations of the overtime rule. Previously, if Jeff, your Broncos got the ball first, if you scored a touchdown, the game was over.
Mm-hmm.
But if you kicked a field goal, then my team would have a chance to also counter that. Now it's both teams will get it. Now only 10 minutes. So, that it used to be a full 15. Now the 10 minutes, I don't want to act like teams just carve out 10-minute drives. But if you were to bleed the clock for an 8-minute field goal drive, now you're only allowing that team to get 2 minutes or even an 8-minute touchdown drive.
Yeah, and it's always interesting because do you like the continual flow of play? Let's say Team A gets the ball first and they get to the 50-yard line, but they have a 4th and 8, so they punt the ball. And so you maybe put that team back down inside their own 10-yard line, or are you a fan of both teams get the ball at their own 30-yard line? Let's go.
I kind of like this. The whole play 10 minutes out. For the most part, both teams should get the ball. I guess you would probably be sudden death if
because
both
then it
teams
feels more like
somehow
a football game if you do
scored
it that
a touchdown.
way, right?
Yeah, and not just I still think the flip of the coin mattered a whole lot under the previous one. So, yeah, I think I'm good with this.
Yeah. And then, of course, their vote. We talked about this in the last hour. The voting on the tush push, which I just think is ridiculous. They've designated it a legal play for the last couple of years, and one team seems to be way better at it than anybody else, the Philadelphia Eagles. They happen to be the Super Bowl champions right now. You cannot stop the Eagles right now with Jalen Hurts at quarterback on 4th and 1 or 3rd and goal at the 2. You can't stop them, Kevin. Just can't do it, and I think the rest of the league is mad, but nobody else can do it either.
Well, I mean, till you show me injury evidence that play increases significantly, it just seems like you're crying over spilled milk. The rest of the league get better. I mean, the Colts tried to do it a couple of years ago. They tried in Shane Steichen's first ever game.
A version of it, haven't they?
They tried a little bit later, and again, Shane Steichen, you would think would know, what goes into it from a technicality standpoint, fundamental standpoint, and the Colts haven't been able to do it. So, yeah, I got no issue with it.
Of the teams and the quarterbacks that exist right now, the one other team I thought would be wildly successful at it, but really has had mixed success at best, would have been the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen, right?
Yeah, you would think them. Obviously, they had their issue in the playoff game against the Chiefs. I mean, the Colts a few years ago with Jacoby Brissett, they were outstanding.
He's a
team.
Big, strong dude, too.
Yeah, outstanding sneak team. And that wasn't, tush push necessarily or brotherly shove, however you want to call it. So
that was more traditional quarterback.
Yeah, that was just sneaking. But Jacoby was great. I mean, hell, at times I thought that was Colts should just QB sneak it 4 times and see if somehow, some way that I could get him 10 yards.
Also, if you're just waking up today, we've talked about it a few times, but Frank Reich is the interim head coach at Stanford with Andrew Luck as the CEO of that program right now. Not the athletic director, the football CEO.
And you said they don't have their AD anymore?
I don't believe, or I'll have to double check on that, but I want to say they don't have an AD right now. No.
Again, it sounds like Reich, and to me, he's the perfect. If you were to describe a high-level academic institution that needs someone to come in, steady the ship, if you will, not let his ego get in the way, not want to, at the end of the season, demand that he's the long-term head coach, Frank Reich seems to be the perfect guy for it at a place like Stanford.
And clearly Andrew Luck trusts him implicitly.
Yeah, and I mean, Andrew Luck has said this, his favorite year playing football, he mentioned, was 2018, which, again, that makes the whole retirement the very next, August so confusing. But, yeah, I mean, Reich checks out, 63 years old, do this for 6-7 months. He's gotten through really all the BS, if you will, the offseason. When it comes to college football, for the most part, it's just, all right, coach away, and, yeah.
I do find it interesting. My favorite part about Andrew Luck becoming the CEO of football at Stanford is the return on Twitter of the Captain Andrew Luck account that gets updated.
Oh,
now.
Did we get one of those yesterday?
Not yesterday, but I think 2 or 3 days ago. So you got to like that. I'm sure there's one coming today about bringing in reinforcements.
Yeah, very, very fitting on that. Yes.
All right.
Do they play Notre Dame too next year? Stanford?
They usually do. I haven't seen I haven't looked. You would know that. You should know Notre Dame's schedule by now.
I should. Well, Notre Dame plays a handful of ACC teams. I think they do for some reason.
You check that out in the
Usually
meantime.
they end it with Notre Dame or USC or Stanford or USC. Yep, they do.
All right.
Notre Dame final game of the season.
So that should put you at ease after the tumult that was caused you by Tiger Woods.
I don't like rooting against Frank Reich, but I'm gonna have to.
All right. Coming up in a moment, we've got Indy 11 tickets, fast fingers. First one in at 239-1070 is going to get those. We'll tell you more about that in a second. Jiffy Lube stat of the day is on the way, and we'll wrap up what has been a very great show here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Trying to get rid of us, Corbin, here, the final countdown and everything on a Tuesday morning, a Victory Tuesday for the Indiana Pacers.
They used to play
Butler?
this with a minute to go in our passing periods in high school. So now I'm just panicking, making
really?
sure I have all the books and I can get to class on time.
A little cathedral flashback for you right there.
PTSD, Corbin Lingenfelter.
Man, you didn't know what you were doing there, did you, Corbin? All right, we had Indy 11 tickets on the line for the April 5th match against North Carolina FC. Fast fingers, first one in at 239-1070. We'll get those tickets. You and I were talking about this. Have you taken the girls to one of those matches yet?
Just one girl for the Bowen family.
So I keep
girl
I
and
say
boy.
that to Mark because I know I know Max and I know
Maxwell, not Maxine, right?
Yeah.
We have gone.
I'll do that 64 more times because you know me, right?
We have gone kids though over to the what is that? Carroll Stadium. I'm trying to think what the official name of it is. And the Brickyard Battalion, always a lovely atmosphere there. So yeah, with them opening up their home slate, Victory Field opening up tonight. I know a lot of fun spring and summer venues here. Obviously, you got the Fisher's Freight starting this weekend up at the Fisher's Event Center. Really fun time of year, and boy,
I'm looking forward to going and seeing one of those games. Actually,
yeah, I can't wait.
We should go. We should have a show trip. You, me, and James out there.
I love. I remember going to a Firebirds game back in the day, and I absolutely love that. And we're only a month away from WNBA training camp opening up.
That's hard. To believe,
May 17th, the Fever opener.
All right, looking forward to that. So a lot going on there. As far as the Pacers winning again last night, sometimes you just got to take however it works, however it looks. You just take the win and you go home. The thing is your big gun making all the money put a dagger into the Kings last night, and then it was backed up by Siakam on the next play.
You know, again, I've said this all morning long. No Matherin, no Turner. Halliburton a season high in turnovers. I mean, hell, he had 3 in the first 5 minutes. I thought he was sick. And Siakam has one of his worst shooting nights of the entire season, and you won. And, for the most part, the Kings are full strength. So for you to have got it done, I think you can just breathe. Now, again, is that 48-minute product going to beat playoff teams? Probably not, but still, there's a level of surviving. The Pacers have survived a whole lot here over the last month or so. Halliburton hit the huge shot there, and for as bad of a night as Siakam had offensively, the switch on Malik Monk, forcing the shot clock violation, and then hitting the 3 to ice it. At the very least, you want your big-time players to step up in those moments, and Siakam did.
He also looks like he's having fun playing basketball last night. That's the thing I noticed about Tyrese Halliburton. He looks like he's always just having a good time.
Yeah, I was going to say, Siakam, to me, he looks tired, frankly. And that's why I asked Rick about that earlier, and it sounds like they would like to get him an off day, so something to keep an eye on here down the stretch.
All right, let's check out our Jiffy Lube stat of the day, provided as always by the one, the only Scotty Johnston. Kevin, the Oklahoma City Thunder ran their winning streak to 10 games with a 145-117 pounding of the Chicago Bulls last night in OKC. It was the 49th double-digit win this season for the Thunder, the second most in an NBA season. The only team with more wins by at least 10 points in a season, the 71-72 Lakers with 50. OKC is the fifth NBA team to record 46 or more double-digit victories in a season. Of the other four, the 95-96 Bulls, not bad, right? The 70-71 Bucks, I think that was the first year of Lou Alcindor / Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the 2016-2017 Warriors, along with those previously mentioned Lakers, all four went on to win the NBA championship. This could be Oklahoma City's year.
If I gave you Oklahoma City and Cleveland, or I gave you the field to win it all, who would you take?
Oklahoma City. I still think the most dangerous team in the East is the Boston Celtics if they get everything together.
So if I gave you Thunder Cavs, you're taking that group over the rest of the NBA to win it all?
Yes. Might throw in the Celtics, too.
Well, you can't do that.
Well, then
Thunder Cavs or the rest of the NBA?
I'll still take the Thunder. I think that they're on their way. So, yeah, Thunder Cavs.
Lack of playoff experience, worry you at all?
In most years, but there seems to be, as much as I like the Celtics, and I said if they can get it together, they really haven't quite gotten it together, though, have they? Not to the extent that we've seen in the past couple of years.
Yeah, we're still just not. I mean, I'm trying to think. The Thunder last year, they bowed out in the Mavericks beat them in the semis. That sound right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I mean, that's the only playoff series they've won, right? Was last year in the opening round?
Yeah, but I think they've got that experience, and I just don't see.
It will be different whenever they encounter this, assuming they do. It will be a lot different.
But they are rolling. I mean, look at what they did to the Pacers the other night. They are rolling over teams right now.
Sure,
just rolling through this.
Winning in March is certainly different.
What about you? I'll ask you. I'll flip the question on you.
I would take the field.
You still don't believe in the Oklahoma City Thunder?
I would take the field.
I don't believe in
I think I just like my chances with more. The West, I don't know if I necessarily have a team out West to the point in the East. I mean, the Celtics still. And I'm not, we'll see when Brunson gets back, but I get the minute count can get a bit high for some of those Knicks players, but boy, Knicks Celtics in the semifinals, that could be quite the series if they get Brunson back.
I kind of like the way things are going right now, though, too. I'm not going to tell you. I don't dislike the Pacers' chances in the Eastern Conference.
I think they're going to be such a tough out.
I think they're going to be a really tough out.
Yeah, tough out. Now, again, winning 3 series and getting the injury breaks like they did last year, probably not going to happen, although maybe the Damian Lillard thing could be a break. But still, I think, I almost think of it like a video game. When you're playing the bad guy, the enemy, like finishing him.
Finish him.
Is difficult. You're getting all the way there, and I kind of feel that way about the Pacers. Hell, certainly the last month. Again, for those that missed it, Rick Carlisle on with us this morning. We hit on that. Also, I know a lot of people had questions about that Wizards game last week, why Rick didn't go for the NBA record at the end. I thought he actually gave a pretty expansive answer on that. Reminder, transfer portal-wise, I know Indiana and Purdue fans are curious about their situations. We did see Purdue add big man Oscar Clough yesterday. The Australian. Washington State for a year after junior college. South Dakota State most recently, 17-12 last year for the Jackrabbits. He is a big boy, 6'11", 260. He is a rebounder. He's highly efficient around the basket. Matt Painter hinted that they would add some physicality. This certainly checks the box. Don't think high flyer. Don't think rim protector. Don't think stretch 4. This is a bruiser. And really how that looks with Trey Kaufman-Wren and Daniel Jacobson, I think will be interesting. But at times, Will Berg and Caleb Furst, not even at times, frankly, they were just offensive liabilities. So that is the Purdue move. And again, we've got some local names in the portal. Flory Badunga, back end, Mr. Basketball, after 1 year at Kansas. Kanan Catchings, the former 5-star, highest-ranked recruit in Purdue history, he's back in after spot duty at BYU. And did you see our Final Four darling from a couple years ago? He was kind of the first big NILer. Remember Nigel Pack?
Vaguely. Now you bring him up, I wouldn't have thought about him, but now that you bring him up, I remember.
The Kansas State to Miami, and that was some Purdue interest. Back there a couple of cycles ago, certainly Miami had issues this season. Jim Larinaga stepping down, so Nigel Pack from Lawrence Central back into the fold.
Let me ask you this. You surprised how quiet it's been in terms of players at least incoming to Indiana after the announcement of DeVries as the head coach last week?
Surprised by the lack?
I just, when's he going to put this team together? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I don't necessarily worry too much about it. Like calendar-wise, I feel like April is when things really pick up portally.
But you start to see rumors and guys.
Yeah, they had a couple guys on campus yesterday. Ryan Conwell, I think Josh Dix maybe today. Obviously, Badunga's a name that I think a lot of people are curious about with the Indiana Elite connections. Drew Adams reportedly joining the staff down there in Bloomington. But portal activity I feel like really ramps up here in April. Last year obviously didn't work out for them, but I can't recall them getting many of those guys before April last year. Even Dusty May at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I maybe would have thought a West Virginia guy or two just would have immediately followed. Besides Tucker.
You would have thought, yeah.
Besides Tucker, of course. And we haven't had that we haven't had that right now. I know the DePaul point guard, I think Connor Enright's his name, reportedly is visiting, so we'll see about that.
And I still think this is fascinating. In the women's college game, too, we had talked about this in the last hour, but one of the best players for Notre Dame this past year, Kevin, was set to go be a top 2 pick of the WNBA and has now entered the transfer portal.
I just think it's so much.
Because there's going to be so much more money available to her that way through NIL than there will be the $70,000 salary you can make in the WNBA.
Do you know how much Cooper Flagg will make in his first year in the NBA? Like purely NBA contract. Do you know that number?
NBA, it's a couple of million, I think. The 4 or 5, something like that for a first-year player.
Okay, let's just call it $4 million. I don't know. Let's call it Cooper Flagg will make $4 million with the Wizards or whoever. Caitlin Clark made $70-some thousand last year with the Fever. Now think about how much Cooper Flagg would make going back to Duke. Probably a similar amount. And how much would Caitlin Clark have made had she gone back to Iowa? Much more than $70 12,000. So
12.6, Kevin, for the first overall number 1 pick in the NBA right now.
is that annual? That
According
can't be
to
annual.
Spot Track, the first overall pick in the 2024 draft is expected to sign a contract worth $57 million over 4 years.
Wow, $12 million annually.
That was last
Jeez.
year, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, when you put it into those terms, boy, that's so much different than the NFL.
Yeah.
When you think about it, obviously, WNBA economics. Now, again, the new CBA is going to go into effect. It sounds like for 2026. So, how that influences these Olivia Miles type of decisions, I think will be one to watch. And Notre Dame is paying Hannah Hidalgo a healthy factum. So I think that is a factor.
Do you know what that is about?
This.
Any idea what that
I would not know, but I think
Yeah.
I think certainly into the six figures.
Which is more than you're making in the WNBA. So it'll be interesting. So it sounds like Miles is like, hey, you guys feel free to match, or I might get a better deal somewhere else, and that's why she's gone into the transfer portal.
She's also had injury history in college, so
Yeah.
this is her chance to really, really cash in. And if you're to get hurt on that rookie contract, you're just not going to really benefit from that at the WNBA level.
That's crazy. Any other final thoughts on owners' meetings today? Anything you expect? Probably not much for the Colts, right?
No, I think you'll see a lot of rule stuff. Shout out to Aaron Neesmith last night, by the way. 6 of 6 in the final 20 seconds. I know I mentioned Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker, but Neesmith's free throws I thought were big. But yeah, owners' meetings wise, I wouldn't think too much on that front, and maybe a rule change implementation or two. But now that we get through this, the next 2 weeks should be relatively quiet.
All right. Tonight, over at Hinkle Fieldhouse, UC Irvine taking on North Texas in the NIT semifinal. You can watch that on ESPN. Also, Loyola, Chicago, and Chattanooga at 9:30. We talked to Fran Fraschilla, who will be on the call for that later on tonight. KB, great job as always. Thanks to the Cluster Truck for bringing us some great food. Corbin, outstanding work on the ones and twos
Thank
today.
you, Corbin.
We appreciate that. James Boyd is in West Palm Beach right now. Jake at noon, JMB at 3. Have fun.